Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto and Hinata were in Bleach. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by JustAnOldGuyWhoQuit and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. You're not him either. Naruto Uzumaki cracked a bleary eye, trying to locate the source of the strange voice. A rotund figure skipped away from him through the blackness. He could barely make out the large off-white coat that fell below its knees. Swallowing the dryness in his mouth as his vision focused, Naruto failed to make anything but a faint gasp come out. The figure turned, a white smile of dagger-shaped teeth consumed most of a long face, as menacing yellow eyes glared wickedly from behind a pair of thin wired glasses. The little skin showing was smooth and grayish, highlighting the long pointed ears pressed out by the rim of a tall hat. Good evening. The creature's grin never stopped, nor did the clenched teeth separate, leaving the voice slightly muffled. How sad it is for you to be up so early, my little friend. Naruto attempted to question the strange being, but the words wouldn't come out. He struggled to sit up, but not a single muscle moved. What was going on? Did he finish Madara? Oh hell, what if the makeshift technique teleported instead of killed? It is so odd for you to be up so soon. Most spirits take years to awaken. The creature gave a slushy-sounding laugh. The residents of your world continue to impress. Naruto delved down into himself. Where was his chakra? If he could pull even a tiny amount out, he'd be back on his feet. It should be so simple to find, so why was there only emptiness where it usually sat? Things have been so busy since someone tore the gate down on your side. Those creatures and the three before were interesting, as are you three. 3. Naruto followed the shift in the creature's gaze. Stretched out on their backs, Hinata and Lee slept so still he worried they were dead. Well, if the thing told the truth, they were dead, but so was he. He'd shake his head in confusion if his body would just respond. But none of you are that sage. The creature spun around on its toes. Now I can continue my work in peace, but what to do with you three? Naruto's throat tightened as the creature moved over to Lee, paused, then crouched over Hinata. Ooh, she is such a beautiful creature. Naruto could have sworn the thing added a heart at the end of its statement. Maybe, I should spare her from the void. Naruto pulled harder on his missing chakra as the creature's gloved hand reached down for Hinata's cheek. His muscles refused to budge no matter how hard he willed them to. Damn it, move. He struggled more frantically. Move. Out across the sea of dark, 3 bright stars blinked into existence. The thing looked up as the lights raced toward them. Oh dear. It hopped back as the beams engulfed each of the ninja. I'm afraid this won't do. The creature stretched out a hand encased in malevolent energy and shoved Naruto further into the void. What could he do? His left arm, charred down to the bone, hung limply by his side as his sword lay buried in the ground miles away. Such a thing by itself did not leave him overpowered, but being drastically outnumbered did. And that man hadn't made a move yet. He simply stood above him, calculating several moves in advance as honey-brown eyes shined mirthfully. Ignoring the gloating man, he cast his wrinkled eyes to the destroyed city around them. The broken remains of his army unceremoniously left where they dropped as the strongest were held at blade point, barely breathing and in no condition to even stand. The honey-eyed man pulled out a small dark orb from his vest and held it out in his palm. You performed admirably, Genryusai Dono. Thanks to your arrival, I now have plenty of energy to fuel my Hijyoku. The man smiled arrogantly. Your names will be etched on the throne of God in remembrance of your sacrifices. The orb shimmered and the world seemed to shift before a dark purple light engulfed everything. Simulation failure. The red caricatures flashed as the scene faded away to black. An audible hiss arose as the front of the chamber slowly opened. Genryusai Yamamoto placed his long calloused fingers against his face and attempted to rub the fatigue away. This was the 12th simulation they had run in the past 32 hours. One immediately after the other and all of them failures. This is not working, Mayuri Kuretsuchi. He growled out, his tone rougher than its normally plain gruff sound. There have been over 300 simulations in the past month and nothing has provided answers. The hunched-over doctor came around from the side. I lack the necessary data to accurately produce a suitable situation. We have already logged over 40,000 variables with 200,000 more in development. Get me useful data on Aizen and I would be more than happy to provide a flawless simulation. Yamamoto let a hint of his power leak out from its tightly controlled veil. There is no time for excuses. The old man stood and reached for the gnarled cane resting on the outside of the chamber. Aizen's attack could possibly arrive days, even months earlier than expected. You have what is available. Make use of it. Spinning on his heel, he strode out as his white torso-length beard swayed with each step. Holding up his free hand, a black glittering butterfly floated down and gently landed in his palm. Attention all Gate 13 captains. The Hueco rescue mission is to be cancelled immediately. Report to 1st Division headquarters in 3 hours, no exceptions. He dismissed the little creature with a gentle wave, helping the air catch under its wings. The grip on his cane tightened as he walked out into the night sky and stood upon the Science Division balcony. Inhaling the fresh air deeply, his red eyes scanned the horizon and all below. The pearl-white facings of the city's many buildings stood proudly, as if nothing could ever topple their grandeur. He kneaded out a knot tightening in his opposite shoulder. It was subtle, but every year the weight on his shoulders grew a little heavier, the threats a little more difficult to surmount. What they were up against now was not new, nor would it be the last crisis. There was always going to be Hollow, Rogue Shinigami, or some other force bent on destroying Sirte or harming innocent souls. Yet at the heart of it, Aizen raised more concern. There existed no reason to justify such a thing. He was skilled at deception, dangerously intelligent, and had hidden all the cards. It wasn't anything new. Still, the anxiety remained. The primary concern stemmed from the issue that Aizen had an unknown force, could no doubt duplicate and enhance it at will, and was fully aware of theirs. The latter was something in need of immediate change. This place smelled funny. It was too clean and bland, almost like scent in itself. Even worse, they covered up another scent, something familiar. Blood. Clear blue eyes opened to a dusky sky. It looked painted on, fake, just like the air. He knew the false sky hid something. What that something was had to be important because his heart cried out for it, and a big part of him wanted to get up and tear down every last inch of it, despite the feeling it held something terrible back. So you finally decided to get up, huh? The world shifted around him, so he stood on a barren dirt field. It lacked the stale scent of dust, just more blandness. A man appeared out of the wind, his nearly glowing red eyes causing a nervous shiver down Naruto's back. Who are you? Naruto clenched and unclenched his hands into fists. Me? I'm your new master, kid. Naruto went to bite back a retort, but the man's predatory grin froze him in his tracks. You better get used to the fact quick. What do you mean, you're my new master? You're going to be my new sword, Naruto. Huh? While not the most intelligent of responses, it definitely summarized his entire mind frame. This odd place, and the unsettling man, confused him as did the name. Naruto, he knew it was his name, or at least, it felt like it was. He lacked the feeling of any bond to it though. It lacked the significance names carry. Memories and weight, the definition of who he was remained absent. It felt like his name should mean something. Like the painted sky, the name seemed to hide so much potency behind it. What do you mean, huh? The red-eyed man took a step closer, kicking his chin up and glaring down at him. Don't tell me your memories haven't kicked back in yet. Yeah. Naruto scratched the back of his head with a nervous grin. Sorry, everything's kind of a blank. The man stomped up and picked him up by the collar of his plain white shirt, using only one hand, the raven-colored hair billowing out around the man's shoulders as anger rolled off him. I haven't sat around in this damn place for 300 years for you not to remember who you are. Clenching his teeth, the words bubbled up in Naruto's chest, and he grabbed the man's wrist. What the hell does it matter to you if I remember who I am? Because your power is attached to who you are, and if you can't access it, we can't get out of here because your body won't wake up. Naruto blinked. Huh? The man tossed him back with a frustrated sigh and folded his arms across his chest as Naruto struggled to stay on his feet. Dressed in silken black, the baggy robe-like garment hid what had to be powerful muscles. For whatever reason, Naruto knew most people couldn't make him stumble. Alright punk, let's go over the basics. I'll talk. You shut up and listen, got it? Naruto frowned but slowly nodded. Your name is Naruto Uzumaki, and you're dead. Boo. Shut up. Naruto yelped as the man punched the top of his head. Right now, you and I are spirits who have formed this mindscape to talk to each other. It's our common ground. Your body is nothing more than energy waiting to reform around a spirit and form a soul. Naruto rubbed his head and stuck out his bottom lip in a pout as the man continued. Only one of us can claim that body and become physical souls. The other one will be tied to the soul's Zanpakuto. Zanpaku what? A sword derived from a person's soul, or in our case, a sword binding our two individual souls. One of us takes the body. The other gets stuffed into the sword and gives up his power to the wielder. The man flashed a feral grin as a murderous aura radiated off of him. And punk, I ain't sitting tight and giving my power to some snot-nosed brat. Give me back my precious research, you brat. You brat, have some respect for your sensei. Brat, what makes you think you have what it takes to be Hokage? Naruto's eyes lit up as the image of a smiling man with long silver hair flashed through his mind. He knew this man. He knew how important he was to him. Good job, Naruto. Nice gaki. Tears pricked at the corners of his eyes as bittersweet warmth filled his heart. Look, Hiro-sensei, I did it. I got the Shunshin. And how many trees did you take out in the process? Are you actually crying, punk? Naruto wiped his eyes on his bare forearm and stood to his full height as countless images streamed through his thoughts. Jiraiya, even now, the old pervert was helping him. His sky blue eyes locked onto the smoldering red of the much taller man. Plastering a grin on his face, Naruto pointed his finger defiantly. I don't know who the hell you think you are, but that body belongs to me, Naruto Uzumaki, the greatest ninja to ever come out of Konoha. Feeling intent swept out and kicked up dust as the man's eyes narrowed. You want to repeat that death wish? I sure as hell don't know what's going on, but if I'm here, Hinata and Lee have to be somewhere close by. And if that creepy ball-shaped thing has them, I don't have time to waste on you. Light blue energy swirled up around him, pushing back the man's rage and sweeping out across the ground. It felt different than chakra pure and moved through his entire body instead of a series of pathways. But the oddest part was that there was nothing to mix. There were no physical or spiritual energies. It was just one massive power. Crossing his fingers in front of his chest, a grin grew as the man's lips dipped into a tight frown. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. A brief gust of wind blew between them, the energy dying and leaving them in a staring contest. Did you just try and attack me? Naruto's grin became more nervous. Why the hell hadn't it worked? He made the hand seal, although none of the energy had moved with it. That didn't make any sense though, seals were supposed to direct the chakra through muscle memory, so a ninja only needed to worry about the sequence, not moving the energy itself. A hand seal had a defined balance of chakra volume and movement, things that didn't change with a jutsu. It was why they were drilled constantly in the academy, or why a completely new hand seal needed to be created for a technique outside of the basic elements. It was why they weren't always necessary after the body remembered how to form a technique from countless repetition. When he was alive, he could form one or two clones without a seal. Was it possible for him to do it now? By only having a single energy in the body, it should be easier. Or maybe it would be better if he tried to retrain his body to shape the energy freely. The good dog knows better than to bite his master's hand. A katana, nearly 5 feet long with a golden hilt materialized in the man's hand as his face twisted up into a scowl. Now, be a good boy and play dead. The man lunged at him so fast Naruto barely dove to the side, the tip of the lengthy katana barely missing the edge of his neck. The ninja leapt high up, crossing his fingers and consciously moving the energy through his system. It had taken him hours to make the energy flow naturally when he first learned the technique, and with the way his opponent looked at him now, he lacked that sort of time. He needed to go big. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. 600 copies burst into existence around him. He bit back a curse, so his control had crapped out completely. He'd hoped for a number closer to 100. So much of his growth had come from filtering his massive amounts of chakra, leaving it untamed for any length of time asked for trouble. It needed to be his main priority. The man rested his sword on his shoulder and glared up at him. But first, this guy was going to eat dirt. The Naruto army shook the air with a synchronized battle cry as they rained down on the swordsman, fists and feet raised to pummel him flat. Vizuchi. The softly spoken word had been hidden by the shouting clones, but the effect of his sword piercing the ground was not. Hundreds of blades made from tightly compressed air erupted up around him in a protective dome, slicing and dissecting anything caught in their path. Naruto quickly pushed off of a clone's back out of the attack's range, a stray gust slicing the double to pieces an instant later. Landing, he darted straight for the man. Long range was out, so close range would have to work. The blade flashed and another torrent of razor wind rushed toward him. He twisted around it, the swordsman already over him and swinging down. Shunshin. The energy wrapped around Naruto's body in a shell and then rocketed him in an uncontrollable line 300 yards away. He bounced and flopped along the ground for 100 more feet before finally rolling into a crouch, blood trickling down from the cuts on his head. That hadn't worked as planned. The man charged at him again, rapidly closing the distance with burning eyes. Naruto stretched his hand out in front of him. The energy began to spiral into a dense sphere. Suddenly, shooting pain raced from his fingers up through his arm as the phantom sensation of it being ripped apart cancelled the technique. The cold sweat breaking out on his pale face, he gave a shaky look down at his cramping, but unharmed, appendage. What? Pay attention. Eyes snapping up, Naruto flipped back as the blade swiped at his head, claiming a few blonde hairs. What's the matter? You won't get your body back like this. The man kicked him hard in the ribs. He coughed violently, the air in his lungs vomited up with specks of blood and spittle. Don't worry though, punk. If she's in trouble and can't handle it herself, I'll save that woman of yours. Either way, I promise she'll be well taken care of. She wouldn't fall for a creep like you. Kid, after she meets me, Hinata will forget all about you. You stay away from her. Make me. The large red claw of energy caught him straight in the chest, soaring high up into the air and then slamming down into the ground. Naruto crouched down on all fours. Enveloped in red with two fox tails swinging behind him, the ninja stalked up to the dust cloud. His feral eyes focused on the shadow climbing to its feet. That little attack wasn't going to take him out, and it wouldn't be any fun if it had. No focus, don't let the demonic energy influence your thoughts. The plume blew away in a burst of rage-backed power. The swordsman stood proud, scuffed and bruised, but otherwise unfazed. You're going to pay for that, punk. They exploded for each other, blade and claws clashing in a furious barrage of sparks and snarls. Naruto used his tails in conjunction with his hands and feet to strike at the man, the rapid-fire barrage, ensuring at least 2 attacks struck at any given time. He stabbed with his tail while throwing a kick or sweep low while punching high. The combinations once even made Lee break a sweat during one of their sparring practices. And the bastard blocked all of them with a single sword. Naruto sucked in a lungful of air and unleashed a might roar, knocking the man off balance long enough for him to slip underneath and slam both his feet up into the scowling jaw. Spinning on one hand, Naruto whipped the other around while extending another energy claw and catching the man in the side. The man soared through the air. 2 claws caught him and smashed him into the ground, pinning him in place as the bubbling energy sizzled and hissed. Naruto approached slowly. The bastard shouldn't be a problem held down like this, and ribs had definitely cracked. "Who are you?" Naruto's voice came out harsh and animalistic despite his best efforts. Even with the Kyuubi dead and gone, it's chakra. No, it wasn't chakra anymore. It was just energy. Regardless, it still radiated evil. It was really going to suck having to relearn how to mix it into his system again without Jiraiya's guidance. And he had just mastered it before he fought Madara too. Sure, the power still rested in him somewhere, barely out of reach, like whatever lurked behind that annoying sky. "Kaio. Why are you trying to take my body? You didn't listen to a damn thing I said, did you? Stuff about swords, souls, soul swords, and spirits is kind of hard to follow. It's going to take a little history lesson." He bit back a groan. That type of crap had been forgotten once he got out of the academy. It was the worst aspect of going there in the first place. Boring, confusing, boring. The last day of history class was the happiest day of his life. Fine, but keep it short. I died 300 years ago. Something I couldn't kill hunted me down and killed me. What was it? They called it a hollow. It was a soul warped into a monster by regret and negative emotions. You came across one once. It called itself the Death God. Naruto's eyes widened the fraction of an inch. The Shinigami, that wasn't a creature he wanted to remember. None of his attacks had done much against it, something about Ryukyu only damaging it. Now that he thought about it, hadn't he figured it out that stuff was spiritual energy? Is that what he was utilizing now that he didn't have a body? Since he was dead. So there's more than one of those things. There are millions of them. Although now that I could become a soul, I'd crush every last one of them. You keep saying souls and spirits. What is all of that? You're dense, aren't you? Naruto frowned and gave a warning squeeze. Think of the soul as the physical body. It's more durable and stronger than mortal flesh, but still has all the same sensations and weaknesses. The big difference is that souls are constructed out of what your world would call spiritual energy, Reishi. The more you have, the more powerful the soul becomes. The spirit is the individual's personality, who they are. So if my body is still unformed, we're talking as spirits right now. Yep. This place is where our spirits can meet and communicate. It is identical to how you used to visit the giant fur ball. Enter your mind and you'll find me here. I enter my mind and I'll find you. And all the talk about being in a sword. We both have enough power that when the soul forms we will become Shinigami. Not the fake one from your world, but epitomized versions of ourselves. Epito wa? The best version. I was becoming an old man when alive, but I'm in my prime now. I'd still age in a soul, but it would be over hundreds, if not thousands, of years. The man shifted against the claws. Shinigami creates Zanpakuto, a sword that is an extension of the soul, but houses a different spirit. It is no different than you having 2 chakras and the fox in you, except one of the chakras and personalities is kept in a sword. How do you know so much about me? Naruto dropped the cloak and the claws along with it. Do spirits always fight over who goes into the sword and who goes into the soul? Our situation isn't normal. Kaio sat up with a grunt and brushed himself off. Normally, the other spirit is a reflection of a part of you. I'm from a completely different person. When I died, I took part in an experiment that would give me a chance to get another body, or at least add my power to someone worthwhile. You died, and for whatever reason, my spirit was similar enough to be drawn to you. And what, you can read my mind. I was given all of your memories. Why don't I have any of yours? You couldn't even remember your own name 5 minutes ago. The mind takes a little while to get back to normal after death, and with as simple as you are, it will only take longer. Naruto ignored the slight and cautiously walked up to Kaio. I remembered who I was after I died. Why did I forget? You only woke up originally because of your power. Most people remain asleep until they've fully moved onto the afterlife. Of course, no one from your world actually comes over to this side. They go straight to the true afterlife. And no, I don't know how you are here. But as for the memory loss, when your entire spiritual being is nothing but a scrambled mess of energy, it takes a few moments for your brain to sort things out. So when people die, they become these Shinigami. Only those with a high amount of spiritual energy, and again, that only relates to the people on the side. Who did this experiment and why did you do it? Revenge. The Shinigami have an entire society similar to the living world, scientists included. I agreed because I was the strongest when I was alive, and if that thing's alive again, I'm going to need to be again. Kaio rolled his neck and then leveled a smirk down at Naruto. Actually, you know what? It might be kind of fun to see what you can do. Kaio picked up his sword and climbed to his feet. What do you? That thing you saw messed up with us meeting directly. You were supposed to wake up right next to the physical form of our Zanpakuto soon after your death. He did something that sent you and the other two spiraling off into the ether. I have no idea where you will wake up and I'm not happy that it's taken this long for our spirits to meet up. How long has it been since I died? 7 years. Naruto's face fell. He thought maybe a few months had passed at most. So many things must have changed. Konoha would be rebuilt and his friends would all be adults and maybe even have families of their own now. What about his parents? Did his death wreck them or did they press on like they always had? What about Hinata and Lee? Were they even in the same world as him? Have they been asleep as well or did they wake up earlier like Kaio planned with him? Had they assumed he would never be with them again? Did Hinata move on? Stop thinking so hard. Kaio moved in front of him and held out the hilt of the sword. I've given you as much information as I can without knowing where you are. Wake up, find out where you are, and try to find my Zanpakuto form. We'll meet up again when you find your feet. And how am I supposed to wake up? Why do you think I'm handing you my power, stupid? He nudged the hilt closer. You're about to get a nice little jump start. Genryusai sipped at the steaming green tea as the last of the white-clad captains exited his personal office. The meeting of all captains had become far more commonplace over the past year, and the 3 empty places sharply punctuated the betrayal of Aizen and his 2 cohorts. It amplified the hidden anxiousness they felt. A single captain was not easily replaced, especially one as dangerous as Jin Ichimaru or as skilled as Kanam Tosen. They lacked 3, which also created the problem that 3 entire battalions were without full leadership. Though not without valiant effort, the vice captains lacked the decisive power to keep their respective companies focused in the heat of battle. Well, they were technically only down 2 captains. Tosen's replacement in the 9th division was promising, but unproven. 3 months since his promotion, and he still had yet to meet the rest of the Gate 13. The newcomer had already achieved great strides in reorganizing and solidifying his leadership, but even the most dedicated required time to fully grasp the responsibilities of a captain. He still depended on his vice captain greatly for information on the day-to-day. Hopefully, his previous experience as a leader would close the gap during all-out warfare. Genryusai set the cup down and stared at the rusted katana hanging on the far wall. The last artificial Zanpakuto remained dormant, unlike the 3 others of its lot. Their wielders were now safely within the walls of the city. The recent 2 had yet to awaken, but if the first one was any indication, they would be immensely powerful assets. Of course, that assumption relied entirely on who those people were. The first possessed honor and morality, a just and noble soul. No one knew who would be beckoned by the artificial blades. They could be the hero soul society needed or the most terrible of villains. It tickled. Coming back to life or afterlife tickled. Like forming from vapor, energy churned and condensed as it shaped bones and muscles, skin and organs. It seemed to be a deliberate process, as if some great hand shaped each speck of ether into its original form, and then suddenly, the body was complete as if it had always been that way. There was no flash or dramatic actualization. He just simply existed again. Naruto pat along his body. The sensations felt the same as before. He tentatively patted a little lower, breathing a sigh of relief. Everything was there. Pinching a cheek in each hand, he pulled his face wide, wincing at the sharp sting. The skin tightened back into place as he let go and ran his hands through same soft blonde hair he'd always known. Weird. His voice sounded the same. Honestly, everything seemed the same, although he felt taller and leaner, but without a mirror who knew. The only things out of place were the baggy black kimono he wore. The pants billowed out around his legs and the top draped over his shoulders down his arms. It fit him well enough with the wide obi around his waist keeping it together, but it was a far cry from his preferred attire. At least the obi could have been orange. The sound teased his ears and he focused his attention to his surroundings. The bright blue sky gifted the vast sands of the desert an air of tranquility. White towers jutted up out of the far-off horizon, and if his senses weren't completely messed up, they were gigantic. Still, the entire setting seemed peaceful enough, except the air almost dripped with an unsettling atmosphere. The sound echoed out again. While dull from distance, he still could tell metal clashing against metal created it. The echoes of shouts and screams only cemented his belief there was a fight going on near the towers. What to do? Naruto folded his arms over his chest and closed his eyes in concentration. He needed to know where the hell he was and how to get to that Shinigami place. It'd probably help knowing what that actually was, but one step at a time. First, he needed to see who was around. Sitting down in the sand, he cupped his hands together and stilled himself. He hadn't a clue to where his control stood and if he could even activate Sage Mode as a dead guy. By consuming living nature energy would it bring him back to life? What if he became a zombie? The image of his rotting corpse dressed in orange and mumbling threats at the grey blob in the hat sent a chill up his spine. Just a little bit at first. He let everything go still as his energy reached out to pull in what surrounded him. Nothing. Did the technique fail? No, it actually worked perfectly. There simply wasn't any natural energy. Everything was lifeless. Being dead is going to suck. Hopping to his feet, Naruto turned toward the sound of the battle as flashes of light flickered in and out of existence. He wouldn't get anywhere standing around here. Brushing the sand off his pants, he pushed a little energy into his feet and blasted forward in a burst of sand. His eyes stretched wide as he raced over the ground. He'd only applied a little bit so he wouldn't have to trudge through the sand, clearing expanses in seconds wasn't a consideration. This spiritual energy's potency compared to chakra like water did air. Had being alive really limited him this much? A cold chill ran up his spine. Lee's going to be unstoppable. Crossing his fingers, he forced 10 of an intended 3 clones into existence. They silently stopped and began to spread out across the desert. He needed his control back quickly or he'd be useless. His eyes drifted down to his empty palm. The Rasengan failing fell under the same problem as a lack of control, but why it caused pain concerned him. His final technique was pure chaos in a ball and a spur-of-the-moment creation. Did it damage him so badly his soul remembered it? That would be such bull. The concussive wave knocked him back a step as the sky blackened. 2 different energies spiked as blue streams of light appeared in the sky. Gritting his teeth, Naruto dug in and ran harder. The source generating the beams definitely emanated a more bloodthirsty feel, and the other confronting it, while similarly dark, lacked the aggressive nature. Naruto reached the base of the closest tower and leapt, his feet snagging onto the smooth wall with only mild difficulty. He stumbled once but managed to keep from falling. The less malevolent energy skyrocketed and Naruto heard something shatter as several of the beams roared by both sides of the tower. To defeat you, Grimjo. Naruto could barely make out a voice as he approached the top. To defeat you, and Ulquiorra and Aizen. Naruto vaulted over the edge and landed smoothly on the top. 5 claw-shaped waves of blue energy split as a young man with orange hair ran his gleaming black Daido through them. He couldn't make out who threw the energy wave, but whoever did lacked any chance of escaping the orange-haired kid's counter-attack. Rukia, Chad, Uryu, Renji, and Orihime, I'm taking them all back with me. Naruto heard a gasp and he spotted a slender girl about Hinata's old age standing at the edge of the tower. Her long cinder hair billowed out as a small child in green rags wearing a skull clutched to her legs. Her large eyes stared wide as the kid closed the last few feet. I can't lose to you, Grimjo. Naruto watched as the kid dressed in an ankle-length jacket stabbed whoever floated in front of him. The blue sky returned as everything gradually settled. The Grimjo guy muttered a curse before falling back. The victor caught him by the wrist, then slowly lowered him down into the sand. Naruto swallowed a lump in his throat. The attack wasn't as powerful as Madara's final move, but the size of the energy dwarfed anything he'd seen before, and that kid literally ripped it to pieces with a sword. If these guys were average in this world, every fight would be a major struggle. If they were weaker, he needed his strength back. The kid effortlessly leapt and almost floated to the top of the tower. He smiled at the 2 girls at the edge of the tower. He spotted Naruto and his brown eyes narrowed slightly. Landing softly he moved in front of them, his blade hanging loosely in his grip. Who are you? Naruto eyed the blade and the worried looks on the girls' faces before meeting the kid's gaze. The youth stood about an inch shorter than he did and he looked about 16 or so. The kid's thin face dipped into a faint scowl. Naruto sucked in a breath and put on a wide smile as he scratched the back of his head. Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm kinda really lost. Chapter 2. Sasuke propped his head up on his fist, the ghost of a bemused smile lining his lips. The unpleasant sensation of disappointment stirring within him was kept unseen. Jin may have sensed it, but his personal guard would remain silent. Really though, how could he not be disappointed? The one child he secretly invested so much into, the one who was to certify his power, barely survived his latest battle and would soon lose badly. To a mere number 5 no less. While struggling to hide it, the orange-haired youth was exhausted, fearful, and because of that, his spiritual pressure remained tenuous at best. Despite utilizing both Bankai and the hollow-imbued mask, his power barely hovered above the level of when he faced Renji Abarai, long before he had acquired either of those powers. Ichigo Kurosaki was, and had the potential to be, the most powerful opponent he would ever face. The one being capable of standing on the same plateau. However, the issue remained that his power fluctuated so randomly it made him unreliable. It was a shame, but number 5 would simply have to dispose of him. How incredibly anticlimactic this all turned out to be. The Shinigami stumbled around in a perpetual game of catch-up and had been effectively neutralized due to many years of subterfuge. Thinking back, perhaps he'd planned it out all too well. He honestly looked forward to a token challenge prior to omnipotence. Now, he would most likely not even need to draw his own sword. The image faded away when something maleficent crept up behind him. Its aura like a thick ink poured out upon parchment. Casually glancing over his shoulder, his vision met a being cloaked in shadow. Only a face-splitting razor-sharp grin emitted any light. Were he anyone lesser, his skin would be crawling. Good evening. The thing spoke without opening its mouth, creating a slight muffled sound. Might I have a minute of your time? Jin actually cracked an eye open as the figure revealed himself to the rest of the room. Tosen's sword struck out in a flash, resting a hair's width from the thing's neck. It never stopped smiling, or even acknowledged the dangerous blade. So either the creature was stupid or powerful enough his enforcer's weapon didn't require notice. Tosen. Aizen waved his hand and the dreadlocked man slowly backed away, then gestured to a chair across the table. Please sit, my unusual guest. It emerged from the shadows, a creature unlike anything he had seen before. Rotund with grey skin and a face-consuming grin, he would have mistaken it for a hollow if it were not for the Victorian top hat and trench coat. And that malicious aura hiding under the surface. Why thank you. The creature gave an exaggerated bow and skipped over to the seat. Might I beg a meal from you as well? I'm partial to either alligator or crocodile. What do you mean you're lost? Ichigo glanced at Naruto's black clothes. Aren't you a Shinigami? Naruto tugged at the loose cloth with a frown. Is that what this was? The red-eyed idiot really should have given him more to go on. I'm a ninja from a place called Konoha. Ninja? Ichigo blinked. You mean the guys in black eye and face masks who throw metal stars around? We don't wear masks, well, most of us don't, and I don't think any of us ever wore whatever you're talking about. I'm talking real ninja. You know, chakra and jutsu and stuff. I only know the one type. Yours sound like something out of a kid's manga. The what? Kurosaki-kun. The taller of the two girls took a step toward Ichigo. Let me heal you while you talk. It can wait until I know who this guy is. I already told you who I am. Naruto crossed his arms over his chest. You really don't listen well, do you? You said I was a Shinigami. Do you know where I can find a society of Shinigami? Is it near here? Ichigo stared at him for a moment. You really are lost. I told you that. Naruto sucked in a deep breath and let it out slowly. It was obvious this new world had a lot of things very different from his. Patience, he needed to be patient and not let his frustrations get the better of him. Look, the only thing I know is that I'm dead, this world is not normally connected to mine, and this guy in my head told me to find his physical form, as Anpaku something. The only lead I have to getting that and all the other questions I have is to go to the place where the Shinigami live. Ichigo and the girl shared a look. Kurosaki-kun, I think he's telling the truth. Yeah. Ichigo sat down and rested his sword across his lap. Alright, we'll try to tell you as much as we can. Naruto followed suit as the girl summoned 3 fairies with kite-like wings from a pin in her hair and formed a barrier around the battered youth. My name is Ichigo Kurosaki. This is Orihim. He nodded his head at the girl healing him. And we're in a place called Hueco Mundo. Hey, Ichigo, you didn't forget about me, did ya? The little girl dressed in green squealed as she pounded her tiny fist on the barrier. Sorry, this is Nell. Naruto pointed at the cracked skull over her head. What's with the freaky hat? It's not a hat. Nell furiously waved her fists in the air. It's my mask. Naruto raised an eyebrow and looked back to Ichigo for an explanation. Nell's in a rancor, they're hollows who have gained powers similar to a Shinigami. He glanced down at her as she babbled insults at Naruto. Although, she's odd even by their standards. I'd be right guessing a rancor are much stronger than hollows, and that guy you were fighting was also in a rancor. Yes. He is one of the stronger ones known as the Sixth Espada. Can you please quit throwing all the names and titles at me? Ichigo's lips tightened into a condescending grin. It's not that hard if you focus. Yeah, and my old instructor at the academy said the same thing. I'm smart enough to get that being called an Espada means he's strong, and the number's his rank. Is a higher or lower number stronger? There are 10 and the lower the number the stronger they get. Well, that answered his question about their strength levels. Not good. The Ichigo kid barely beat one of them in the weaker half, and he himself couldn't stand up to either of them at his current ability. Heck, even his strength during the Madara fight might not do much against a 1 or 2. Naruto peered at the white stone on which he sat. So our main goal is to hide right now and find a way out of here. Speak for yourself. I've got to get my friends out of here. You just told me there are 5 more of these Espada guys stronger than the one you barely beat. I didn't barely win. Ichigo scoffed over his shoulder. I crushed his final attack. You did, but it's obvious you struggled with the entire fight and took a lot of damage. Trust me, I've been in battle enough times to know when someone's outmatched. Why you little what makes you think you can tell me? First, I'm taller and older than you, so stop talking down to me like some kid. Naruto rolled onto his feet and leaned closer to the barrier. Second, I can't get to this other place without someone who knows how, and you're the only option I have right now. I may be being selfish, but I have friends that are in trouble too, and I won't let your stubbornness get in the way of that. So I should abandon my friends to help you? Ichigo swung his arm in front of him. I don't think so. I never said abandon them. Naruto cracked a grin and stood upright. I said we should hide. You have friends. I'll help you save them as payment for helping me, but we're going to do it smart by trying to get around them instead of smashing through. Man, he could almost hear Hiro-sensei laughing at him. That's not possible for me. Ichigo relaxed. I can't lower my Ryoryoku well enough to keep hidden. I'm going to guess that's the spiritual component to chakra. Naruto scratched the back of his head. I'd probably be best for me to go gather them up then. Point out where you last knew where they were and I'll. The headless body of Ichigo's former opponent landed between them, blood splaying out from the neck onto the tower's roof. Orihime gasped and took a step back as Ichigo's mouth fell open in shock. Naruto spun around and stared down over the edge. A tall lanky ranker with a patch over his left eye sneered sadistically up at him. In a whirl of sand, he whipped the giant double crescent scythe in his hand at the base of the tower. Everyone struggled to stand as the pillars shook, then rapidly broke apart to pieces. Nell and Orihime both stumbled as the roof crumbled beneath their feet. Naruto dove for them, silently hoping Ichigo had recovered enough to fend for himself. Catching them by their waists, he bounced from stone to falling stone until they reached the soft sand on the other side of the tower's remains. He gently set them down behind some large debris and held up his finger for them to be quiet. Leaping up and over the wreckage, Naruto remained hidden in the dust cloud, keeping as far from Ichigo's presence as he could. If he guessed right, the ranker could sense the kid's power and would be drawn to him, which gave him the chance to sneak around and launch a surprise attack. The dust swirled as Ichigo's power flared. Naruto could feel him explode out of the rubble straight for the ranker. Naruto exited from the other side and moved around enough to see Ichigo land in front of their opponent. Why did you do that to Grimmjow? Ichigo's free hand clenched into a fist. He couldn't even move. The ranker swung his odd scythe over his shoulder and spit into the sand. Hey, what the hell are you going on about? The weakling lost so he didn't deserve to live. Besides, why do you care? You're gonna be just as dead in a second. The scythe swung around and Ichigo barely brought his sword up in time to catch it. The Shinigami struggled for a second and then went tumbling through the sand. Naruto jumped forward, flipping in the air and bringing his heel down on top of the ranker's head. The blonde winced as he sprung back. It had felt like he'd slammed his foot down on a boulder. Hey. The ranker twisted his head around. Who the frick are you? Aizen stared over the top of his clasped fingers at the strange being devouring all the food being laid out in front of him. You have me at a loss, my guest. You ask for me to release Kurosaki and his friends and then silently begin to consume my dinner table. Aizen let a hint of his power bleed out. I have so many questions for you to answer. Yes, how rude of me. The thing dabbed at its teeth with a napkin. You have been most gracious, my dear host. The thing hopped up and gave another exaggerated bow. I am the Millennium Earl. His yellow eyes glinted up over his wire-rimmed glasses. I am here to assist you in your goals. My goals are already well within reach. You, as odd as you are, provide me nothing I already possess. Oh, poor little pup. There is so much you don't understand. The Earl pinched his fingers together. You know this teeny bit of a much grander puzzle. As preposterous as this thing was, it amused him. Alright, he would entertain it for now. Then please, enlighten me. In the beginning, God created heaven, earth, and hell. Earth was populated by these miserable creatures called humans, vile things steeped in sin and flesh. One day, I realized God's mistake in allowing them to exist and tasked myself with their destruction. The Earl spread his arms wide. I cast down a glorious flood, wiping them from the earth. Imagine, all those billions of spirits, all that energy simultaneously and violently being removed from their physical shells. Aizen's eyebrows rose slightly. Such energy would have caused life and death to merge and end existence. As you can see, we are still here. No, you are here because it happened. The inhuman grin became even wider. All those angry hateful souls swimming in a near infinite sea of power. What do you think spawned from that? Hollows? Everything. The Hollows and their homeland Hueco were formed out of the negative, while Soul Society and the first Shinigami came from the positive. And like water trickling down a smooth surface, once the paths were created life and death followed them instead of reverting to its original cycle. What happened to those who died before your flood? Their essence, the person within the soul, would move to heaven or hell. Their Reishi, the spiritual atoms, floated in the ether. A maniacal look formed in his eyes. It's what I used to summon the purging waves. They stared at each other for a moment in silence as Aizen's enforcers shared a look. The creature went to start eating again, but Aizen placed both hands down on the table. An interesting tale, yet it fails to see what you can provide me. You wish to transcend the barrier of Shinigami and Hollow and sit upon the throne of the Spirit King. The Earl stretched his arms out wide. I ask why merely rule what God created when you can become God and craft everything as you deem fit. Aizen's expression never flickered from its bemused state. However, the possibilities quickly ticked through his mind. The Spirit King, that freakish creature, was an abomination that allowed the world to churn in chaos. Even deposing it would only grant him the ability to rule through power. But to actually shape the worlds, it teased as an interesting possibility, no Hollow, no humans, no fragile balance between life and death. The gray man twirled like a dancer and then bounced away from the table. Leaving so soon? The good tale is told in parts. I will return tomorrow. I would appreciate an answer to one question. Yes. The word was drawn out childishly as he looked back. Why are you specifically requesting for the intruders to be let free? I only care about one of them. I assumed she would obey better if we did not kill her friends. Her compliance is beneficial to our plans. And what do you get out of this? In due time, I will reveal my fee. But first, we require the girl with the ability to reject fate. The pain as her body dissolved seemed so agonizingly long when it occurred. She'd squeezed her eyes tight and died like she had fallen asleep. So now, in a soft bed as warm sunlight cascaded down on her, it felt like waking into a dream. Hinata's purple eyes opened wide. She tilted her head to the left. Lee slept in a mess of balled-up sheets, slightly snoring and mumbling incoherent praises of youth. Sitting up slowly, she studied the white kimono someone had wrapped her up in as she opened and closed her hands. The sheets, her skin, her hair, everything felt the same. Everything smelled the same. Why then, did it seem different pure? You look bewildered. Hinata's head snapped over toward the low voice coming from the doorway. Gaara stood proudly with his arms crossed over a body-length haori. It fit similarly to the robe he had worn as Kazekage. However, the only burgundy color came in the form of highlights to offset the white. The hilt of a sword hung loosely at his hip while the blade rested in a gourd-styled sheath. The rings around his eyes remained prominent alongside the tattoo on his forehead, although his entire demeanor exuded a more relaxed aura. Kazekage-sama. Hinata knew she must have looked like a fish. Naruto's parents told her he died. She knew she died. Had someone saved her at the last minute? No, she knew the plant man's acid had reached her. Even if she did escape, her skin would have been scarred beyond even Tsunade-sensei's abilities. Unless, she shed her old skin like Orochimaru. An unwanted shudder ran up through her body and she gripped her arms with almost pure white hands. It is always odd waking up as a soul. Gaara stepped into the room. It takes your mind a while to process that you have died but are now living. How? Before I start answering questions, tell me, did we win? Did we beat Madara? Her face fell. Had they? She'd seen the unreal amounts of chakra in the tower alone. Her opponent was dead, but for Madara she'd died before having the chance. Naruto felt so strong and carried his confidence all the way to the end, but the chakra Madara must have wielded had to have been a force of nature. But Naruto wasn't here like her and Lee were. Had he won then? What if he was still alive and alone again? I don't know. Tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. Madara had unleashed the Kyuubi on Konoha. Naruto defeated it and we confronted Madara and his two remaining followers at a tower he constructed. I defeated my opponent but died immediately after from my injuries. I don't know if Lee or Naruto beat him. The Uchiha succeeded in gaining all the tailed beast's power then. He was so powerful he didn't even seem human anymore. She waved her hands in front of her. I'm sorry Kazekage-sama. I shouldn't be sounding so hopeless. It sounded like a hopeless situation. His lip tugged up slightly. However, that is the type of scenario Naruto Uzumaki usually finds himself in. She smiled softly. Yes, he does. How bad was the Kyuubi's attack? The villagers had no choice but to abandon the village. Hinata spotted the faintest glimmer of worry creep over his face. I know Tamari was okay and the area where the Suna villagers settled was mostly evacuated by the time the fox arrived at that area. All of us accepted the fact there were no more Suna villagers after Danzo's decimation of our original home. Suna never possessed enough resources to justify re-establishing the village. Your Hokage and I had already agreed to cede the territory to Konoha. While I am glad they were mostly unharmed, they still lost another home. I know it doesn't diminish their suffering, but the Yondaime said they would rebuild in time. Yes, I am sure they would. He let out a tired sigh. There is no point discussing this further when we can do nothing of it. I trust Naruto succeeded or someone else did in his stead. You're right, Kazuki-sama. I am no longer a Kage. You can address me with my title of Taicho, or since it was likely for you to marry Naruto, you are welcome to simply call me Gaara. Despite the pale tone of her skin, Hinata still managed to summon a furious blush. So your skin can produce color. Lee let out a soft snort, mercifully drawing Gaara's attention away. The ex-nin grabbed the sleeping ninja's foot and tossed him off the bed. Lee crashed onto the ground with a yelp. He groggily looked up and blinked a few times. Why I'm alive. Lee rocketed to his feet and gripped his chest over his heart. But, I accessed the final gate. And my leg. Lee-kun. Hinata climbed out of bed. Are you okay? Hinata-san. Lee's roundish eyes dropped to the ground. You perished as well then. I don't know. A swell of conflicting emotions tightened in her chest. They were dead, weren't they? She knew it, but then again, why was she up walking and talking like always? Gaara-san. He nodded slowly and folded his arms over his chest. Yes. All of us have passed on to another life. I will tell you as much as I know about our unique situation. However, I must ask you, Rock Lee. Do you know if Madara was defeated? Lee shook his head in the negative. I never faced him. While my own battle burned brightly, my adversary forced me to sacrifice myself to ensure his defeat. I see. Gaara spun on his heel and headed for the doorway. I will have someone deliver you a Shihakusho. It will be much easier to show you the city as we talk. Gaara-san. Hinata shared a confused look with Lee. Where are we? You're in Sirte. He strode through the door. The Soul Society. Naruto bit back a curse. Someone further out was having a blast killing off all his clones. From the clothes and the bone mask fragment on his face, he must be another ranker. It wouldn't take long for him to pick up on Ichigo's and their current problems' gigantic presences. At least his control seemed to be a little better. Not great by any means, but enough he could potentially use the Rasengan with a Bunshin's help. Crossing his fingers in front of him out of reflex, he pushed the energy through his system more easily than his last attempt. 4 of an intended 5 popped into existence. The lanky Espada blinked in surprise as 3 duplicates rushed forward. Reaching his hand back, the remaining clone got into position as Naruto pushed power into his palm. Sharp pain ran up his arm as his fingers cramped. The clone grabbed the back of his kimono and yanked him back, the massive scythe nicking tip of his chin. The clone flung him high above the fray as the ranker sliced it in half. With a sadistic sneer, the Espada clasped the chain attached to the bottom of the weapon and flung the scythe itself straight for Naruto. Oh, shy. Ichigo appeared in a blur, knocking the giant blade to the side. His face covered in a white mask with dark red streaks splayed out on the left half. Lifting the black Daido high into the air, black energy outlined in crimson surged around the tip. Itsuga. Ichigo's voice reverberated against itself like a growl. Tensho. Ichigo swung down, a giant arc slammed down on the ranker and everything surrounding him. Naruto landed smoothly as dust billowed up from the man-made crater. A nervous bead of sweat trickled down the back of his neck. Ichigo was in a ranker. No, he felt different, reversed from the ranker. Still, he glanced up as Ichigo dispelled his mask and fought to keep his breath under control. That creepy voice, while Ichigo's, sounded uncomfortably similar to that fake death god he met in his seal. The soft rattle of chains echoed from within the cloud. Where the hell did that scythe go? Ichigo, the scythe's gone. Naruto crossed his finger and summoned Ten Bunshin. He's still alive. Leaping back as the crescent blade whipped out in an upward circle, Naruto reached a hand back and summoned the energy again. Come on, he could do this. A debilitating spasm forced him to grab his hand with his unfazed one. Damn it. He mumbled and squeezed down on the worsening palm. Knock it off. Ichigo flipped over the scythe and dove straight into the dust. A shriek of metal on metal echoed across the desert. Naruto cradled his hand tighter to his chest and Ichigo was knocked out of the dust and skid on his back in a wake of sand. The ranker stepped out of the crater dirty but ultimately unharmed. What the hell makes you think that dull-ass piece of scrap metal is going to cut me? He sharply pulled at the chain and the scythe sailed back to him. He stuck out his tongue, proudly displaying the 5 tattooed on the pink flesh. You see that, Shinigami? That means I'm a lot stronger than the weakling you just barely defeated. And you want to know what sucks worse? My hero is the toughest out of all the Espada. Ichigo climbed to his feet far slower than Naruto would have liked. The youth spit out a mouthful of blood as a bruise formed on his cheek. This wasn't good. Ichigo's power wavered between high and low, and even when it peaked with the mask on, it hadn't really fazed the bastard. And if Hiero was basically in a ranker's skin, they didn't have any means of taking him on. The muscles in his hand cramped tighter. Now was not the time for his body to be rebelling. Ichigo blasted toward the humanized hollow. Bringing his blade wide, he swung and another wave of energy raced out from the blade. Twice the size but with no form, it seemed far weaker than anything Naruto had seen the Shinigami throw up to this point despite looking intimidating. I can't lower my Ryukyu enough. He has zero control over his power. Naruto watched as the ranker literally walked through the blast, as if it were a gentle breeze. The idiot probably doesn't even realize it. Damn it. He'd been alive for less than an hour, and he was going to die again because of an untrained kid and a stupid hand. How was he supposed to find Hinata and Lee if it ended now? He couldn't use the fox's power with his current control. He'd need at least 4 tails, and he barely brought himself back from 2. The pain intensified. Cut it out. Naruto bit down on his hand as hard as he could. Tendons and bone crunched as flesh split. Blood dribbled out of his mouth as he held it there, and the hand went still. Everyone paused and stared at him in disbelief as he slowly released his hand and rose to his feet. On my first mission I panicked. My body froze and I couldn't do anything but watch. Naruto held his bloody hand out to the side, and one of the few remaining clones ran up to it. I swore I wouldn't let that happen again. I can't let that happen again if I'm going to get out of this place. Blue energy sprung from his palm as the clone shaped it into a sphere and added the familiar rotation. Ichigo, get me an opening. The younger man nodded and dragged his hands over his face, the bone mask appearing as his eyes yellowed and the white of his eyes changed to black. Charging with a shout, Ichigo's blade crashed down onto the Espada's neck in a shower of sparks. Are you frickin' stupid? The thin giant clasped the blade with his bare hand. I told you your little sword can't cut me. Naruto slid in front of them and slammed the spinning orb into their enemy's belly. The duo pressed their attacks harder as the ranker's feet started to slide. With a final shout, Naruto released the attack and Ichigo knocked the humanized hollow backward into the tower's remains. Ichigo's chest heaved as his mask crumbled away and voice became normal. You know what? I'm too tired to care why you're trying to eat your hand. We need to get out of here before he gets back up and the other one shows up. The other one? You will not escape Noitra-sama. Naruto cursed under his breath as the ranker who destroyed his clones walked out from around the corner, holding Orihime by the neck and knelt by the back of her tattered robes. The little green-haired one did not look well, shivering and sickly sweating. I see you've recollected Pet-sama, Tezzera. Noitra propped his weapon on his shoulder and sauntered out. You friggin' weaklings couldn't even manage to knock me off my feet working together. Hell, you miserable bitches couldn't even scratch my clothes. Noitra-sama, I found her along with the escaped Orihime Inoue. Tezzera tossed Nell over to the base of the tall ranker's feet. Shall I eliminate the Shinigami while you deal with her? Nell too, the former third Espada. Noitra bent over and picked her up by the skull. Ain't this a kick? Nell. Orihime cried out, but Tezzera pulled her tighter in the chokehold. Put Nell down you bastard, Ichigo growled out as he lifted his blade in front of him. Like you can do anything about it. Besides, why the hell would a Shinigami want to protect an Espada? Noitra shook Nell roughly. Who knew you were such a deceitful bitch? I's never an Espada. Nell desperately tried to get Noitra's hand off her head as fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. I didn't lie to anyone. Naruto scanned everyone. 2 hostages, an exhausted ally and 2 enemies, one who they couldn't touch, it was a scenario from hell. What was worse is that Tezzera guy watched him like a hawk. Everyone else kept their attention on the drama playing out in front of them, but that one was sharp enough to keep an eye on him. It didn't help his blood boiled watching that lanky jackass swing the goofy little girl around like a toy. Are you kidding me? Noitra flung her roughly into Ichigo. You get your mask cracked by me and forget everything. Ichigo stepped back as he caught Nell to soften the impact. She buried her head into his chest and openly sobbed. The youth kept his brown eyes glued on the biggest threat but placed a reassuring hand on her head. I didn't lie to you, Ichigo. I promise. Of course you didn't, Nell. Ichigo. Naruto kept his voice low so no one else could hear. You think you can deal with that other one enough to get Orihime? I don't know what you're planning, but if your last attack was the best you have, you can't handle Noitra. I've got something else, but there's no guarantee I won't hurt everyone. Get the girls out of here and then come back for me when you feel me calm down if I calm down. What? Naruto crossed his arms in front of his face and pulled deep at the malevolent energy hidden within him. He needed to go for at least 4 tails. The Kyuubi's soul wasn't in him, so he didn't have to contend with something trying to actively consume him. It was just a naturally corrupting energy he needed to resist. The aura bubbled out first as his eyes reddened and whisker marks darkened. 3 tails grew out from the main mass surrounding his body, and they swept the ground with each agitated flick. His lips curled up into a fierce snarl as the 4th started to shape and the cloak darkened. Time to rip this nuisance apart. Not happening. Almost as if someone had flicked a switch, the demonic power diminished and then disappeared. Noitra cocked his head to the side, while Tezra tightened his grip on a shocked Orihime. Ichigo blinked. Was that it? Naruto felt his heart sink into his gut. What the hell happened? That voice, he knew it belonged to that Kaio jerk. Why did he do that? It was their last chance at escaping. Noitra exhaled in a bitter sigh. Tezra, let's switch. Teasing Pet Sama would be more fun than dicing up these weaklings. Yes, sir. The blonde ranker handed Orihime off and drew his sword. Crush, Veruga. The blade disappeared and a surge of light enveloped him. It faded to reveal the once slim man had transformed into an overly muscular giant. Brown fur replaced once normal skin as a warthog skull encased his head. A thin tail swished behind the pig-like legs as he took a powerful step closer. Naruto, take Nell. Ichigo passed the child over to the blonde. I'll deal with him. We'd be better fighting as a team. I can handle him. He disappeared in a showing of pure speed and reappeared to the side of the warthog. Slashing up, he barely missed as the behemoth leaned back, then suddenly moved in and brought an elbow down onto Ichigo's collarbone with an echoing crunch. Ichigo barely managed a grunt as a massive fist smashed into his gut. Blood and spittle escaped his mouth as the fist buried itself enough his back bulged. Naruto slammed a Rasengan into the monstrosity's back. Tezra stumbled forward and Naruto tackled him. Bunshin Daibakuha. The real Naruto scooped up Ichigo and sprinted away as the clone detonated in a huge explosion of fire and sand. Tezra. Noitra flung Orihime to the side and readied his weapon for a throw. The beast raced out of the flames and caught Naruto by the arm and swung him up high and slammed him into the ground with crater-creating force. The ex-ninja gasped as the wind was knocked out of his lungs. Rolling on instinct, a hoof stabbed the ground right where his head had been. I am fine, Noitra-sama. My fur is just a little singed. Naruto brought his hands up in a guard as the monster strode out of the crater. His teeth clenched, the blonde's knuckles whitened. His exploding clone didn't do as much as he wanted, but it did more than the oversized pig wanted to admit. Maybe no one else noticed, but there was a slight wobble in his walk. He just needed a bigger boom and maybe a way to get past that hierro thing. Naruto, Ichigo's not breathing. Nell shook Ichigo as fresh tears started to build up. Come on Ichigo, you gots to get up. You can't leave us like this. Ichigo. Kurosaki-kun. Orihime ran for the still Shinigami, but Noitra caught her by the back of the head and forced her to her knees. Pet-sama. Noitra's voice dragged out in a mocking purr. Be quiet and watch as your hero dies trying to rescue you. Ichigo. Kurosaki-kun. Naruto, do something. Like that weakling can do anything. Naruto, please. Kurosaki-kun. Do something. Naruto crossed his fingers so hard that he was surprised they didn't break. It had been a long time since he'd felt this powerless. Ever since his training trip with his perverted teacher, every battle depended on drawing from a powerful arsenal of jutsu in the most effective means possible. He never lacked for a decisive technique in his battles with Sasuke and the Akatsuki. And of course, there was always that last-ditch move he could pull out to claim victory. He wasn't limited like he had been in the beginning like he was now. He had his clones. They could blow up. He needed to get creative. Hajukage Bunshin no Jutsu. 500 clones entered the fray. Some immediately transformed into kunai, while others became giant windmill shuriken. They rained down on Tezra, stabbing and slashing, earning shallow cuts. If one was punched or smashed out of existence, another quickly took his place. Overwhelmed, the pig man swatted and kicked at anything that moved. The faction holding the shuriken leapt high into the air and flung the clone weapons for Noitra and Orihime. The sadistic ranker's eyes widened and he quickly shielded the orange-haired woman from the barrage, the windmills bouncing off his skin harmlessly. When are you gonna realize The clone dropped its henge technique and flung a small throwing star straight into the gloating Espada's mouth. The clone grinned. Bunshin Daibakuha. Noitra's head snapped back as the explosion filled his mouth and scorched down his throat. The clone grabbed Orihime and bolted away as the battlefield erupted in a deafening roar of detonating Bunshin. Soten-kissen, I reject. The fairy streaked out from her hairpin and flew over to Ichigo's ravaged body, an orange shield rapidly surrounding him and Nell. Sweat dripped from Naruto's face as exhaustion filled his muscles. That show put him near empty because of all the wasted energy. He needed to get everyone out before anyone else decided to show up and mess with them. Can we move him while you heal him? Naruto asked as his clone set her down beside him. Even with these guys down, I probably just alerted everyone in 100 miles where we were. No. She shook her head and knelt down next to the barrier. My Rika envelop him entirely so there is no way to carry him. I haven't trained my power enough to utilize another ability simultaneously. Great. Naruto kept his attention focused on the smoke. They could still be in there, just shocked enough to buy them a slim window to escape. No, they definitely were only stunned and half buried. Get him breathing. We need to find a place to hide. But if we stay here for much longer we're going to get caught and none of us can fight right now. I know it's a risk moving him so badly hurt, but if he stands any chance at all, we have to go and we have to do it now. Large gray eyes filled with worry dropped back down as Ichigo's chest shakily began to rise and lower. Orihime clasped her hands in front of her. Naruto frowned when she didn't drop the technique. She probably knew the kid wasn't ready to move and wanted to stretch it out to the last possible second. Hell, he knew and it wasn't his technique. I'm sorry, Uzumaki-san, but he still can't breathe on his own, and if I release the technique to move him. I know. Damn it, I know. He gripped his hair and gave it a painful tug. How about you, Nell? You got beat up pretty good. She twisted up from Ichigo's chest. The crack on her hollow mask had sealed slightly. Naruto slowly released his hair and studied her. Was she taller? I feel weird. She tugged at the eye socket in the mask. It itches. Orihime, get Nell out of the technique. What? You're healing her mask. His mouth started to dry as he could almost watch the crack mend. From what that bastard Neutra said, he damaged her mask and she lost her power and memories. She gasped and watched as Nell fully stood, almost a foot taller than her previously diminutive size. What are you guys whispering about? She glanced down at her now knee-length rags. Gah, my clothes are shrinking. Naruto cocked an eyebrow as she broke out into another intelligible rant, only the words perverts and virgins came through clear enough to understand. Uzumaki-san, what do we do? Nell is. Naruto watched as Nell grabbed the edge of Ichigo's long coat and wrapped herself up in it, so only her hazel eyes poked out. She definitely didn't seem evil like the other two Espada he'd seen. Of course, that didn't mean her personality wouldn't flip once her memories came back and she could easily kill all of them. He'd given Sasuke the benefit of the doubt and it cost him Sakura. He'd done the same for Gaara and gained a lifelong friend. Two oppressive pressures, uncomfortably similar to killing intent, spiked within the smoke-drenched battlefield behind them. He whirled around and gritted his teeth. There went that hope. Can he survive us moving him? I don't know. He's still barely holding on. That's going to have to work. She dispelled the technique and he created two Bunshin. One scooped her up and the other Ichigo. He slung Nell over his back and took off in a mad sprint. If they could make it to the rest of the towers, they could find a place to hide. Maybe, he could find a way to talk to Kaio and find out why the hell he stopped him from pulling out his demonic chakra energy. Ezra's shadow fell over him. Dodging to the side as the fist smashed down beside him, he twisted in the air and cringed as the pole end of Neutra's sideswiped him. He cradled Nell in his arms and skid across the sand. Unsteadily scrambling to his feet, Naruto forced himself to suck in a deep breath under the protest of broken ribs. Ezra and Neutra stood side by side. Black patches of char decorated large portions of the former's torso, and the left tusk of his mask had been snapped off. The latter's jaw was missing, and a burnt hole remained where a nose once sat. Well, at least the foul-mouthed creep would finally shut up. You possess a wide array of infuriating techniques, Shinigami. I'm a ninja, not a Shinigami. How was he going to get out of this one? Could he form a Rasen Shuriken? Did his energy even carry a wind element anymore? You smell a little overcooked pork loin. Maybe you and your master should call it a day. Neutra answered by lunging forward and swinging his scythe down in an attempt to split him and Nell in half. Caught in a frantic backpedal, Naruto struggled to weave in and out of an onslaught of cleaving strikes, the mocking glint in the Aranker's cold pupil, completely replaced with a barely sane rage. Keep moving back, Naruto. Nell whispered so softly he barely heard her. Get close to Ichigo and Orihime and I'll get us out of here. Her voice, while still young, lacked the childish lisp from earlier. Was she still growing? Outside of a small missing patch, her mask was almost completely reformed. He arched back as the scythe passed a paper's width from his throat. He couldn't worry about that now. Form on me. Pushing as much energy as he dared to the bottom of his feet, he sprang back and the clones grouped up on either side of him. Nell curled over his shoulder and hopped down, running to the back and lifting her arms up high as Tezra charged. The air itself rumbled as a gaping black maw ripped open in the air itself. Quick, get in. Nell waved them in. She guided the Ichigo-carrying clone in by the hand as Naruto and the other clone dodged Tezra's tackle. The behemoth spun, stretching out an arm and backhanded Naruto into the portal. He pulled Orihime free from the clone and flung her away before diving into the blackness himself. The distortion closed, leaving the cinder-haired girl crumpled on the desert floor. The cruel Espada looming over her. Chapter 3. Hinata bit back a wince as she stared at Gaara's back. They had exited the infirmary to a city of towering white buildings and ornate walls. Far larger than Konoha, the city's architecture matched a more traditional aesthetic, much like the Hyuga compound. Out of habit more than curiosity, she had activated her eyes to map out her surroundings. The pain had been unreal. Instead of seeing everything within her sphere or where she stretched her attention, only blurry streaks of color warped by her at light speed. Rapid shots of pain had stabbed under her skull, as if her brain was being flayed, then twisted into knots. Somehow, she deactivated it quickly enough to prevent herself from fainting, and fortunately, Lee's excitement distracted Gaara long enough for her to regain a little composure. This is Sarate, the home of all Shinigami. We're in the 4th Squad's jurisdiction right now. There are 12 more divisions, most with a particular focus, similar to how you Konoha specialized your genin teams. Why did her head feel like a hammer split it open? How many Shinigami are there, Gaara-san? Lee swung his arms back and forth, then tugged on the sleeves of the black kimono he'd been provided. I don't know for certain, hundreds, maybe thousands. Her eyes themselves didn't hurt or feel off. Did that really matter though? Between her own experimental evolution under her sensei and Danzo's use of Orochimaru's research, no one knew how stable her body was. How that mattered in death was another matter entirely. Are you okay, Hinata-san? Lee slowed his pace and faced her. You are slowing down. I'm sorry, Lee-kun. She forced a smile as her eyes closed. I'm just a little lost in thought with everything. Fear not, my friend. Lee struck his infamous nice guy pose. I know Naruto will soon be here and then we can push forward into this new world proudly and burning with youth. Gaara rubbed the tattoo on his forehead as Hinata stifled a giggle. I can only imagine the chaos both you and Uzumaki will bring to this place. Hinata's lips tightened as another pang shot through her brain. The world tilted and she blinked quickly to correct her vision, only to be met with a blue sky speckled in puffy white clouds. Her two companions' faces appeared overhead. Was Lee holding her? Her sense of touch felt so murky. We're taking her back to the infirmary. I will make sure the 4th Squad captain personally examines her. Is this normal, Gaara-san? Our entire situation is abnormal. However, I doubt this should be happening. He disappeared without his normal flourish of sand. What? Hinata-san, it is okay. We will take you to someone who will help you. She felt a tickle over her lip and gently reached up, her fingers brushing something warm and coming away stained red. Naruto crashed down through the tree line, smashing into the ground and kicking up a dust. A groan escaped his mouth as he stretched out onto his belly and fisted a handful of soft dirt. Nell landed on his back, his spine cracking in a loud chorus of pops as air rushed from his lungs. She thrust her hands up in the air, her fingers splayed into a V. Operation Escape the Bad Guy's success. Nell, get off of me. Naruto mumbled and placed his head on the ground. She continued to roar in victory. His eyes drifted over to Ichigo. The carrot-haired youth draped limply over a branch, but his sword remained tightly clenched in his grip. You alive, Ichigo? The Shinigami didn't respond, but his back raised and lowered with shaky breaths. Good enough. Nell hopped off his back with a flip and landed in a dramatic pose with arms outstretched. Dragging himself to his feet, Naruto absently patted off his clothes and inhaled the earthy smell of the forest around him. The ghost of a smile teased his lips as his nose took in the sense of familiarity. Lush green leaves allowed only streams of light to filter through the massive trees as patches of grass and underbrush struggled to grow in the shadows. Everything radiated with life unlike that desert hellhole. It wasn't Konoha's forests, but an acceptable substitute. He never wanted to go to that dead place ever again. Nell continued to dance and pose triumphantly, and his smile deepened. When they leapt into the void, he knew the warthog followed them in. The little green-robed Duranker did something while they were falling, almost like making a second door that pulled them further in and away from him. It should mean they were safe for now. His instincts didn't buy it though, and unease gnawed away at his gut. They needed to put some distance between them and their landing spot. Then, he should take a look above the treetops and see if he could spot a city or anything that might give them some direction. He extracted Ichigo from the branch and laid him out flat on the ground. At least you're breathing better. Naruto stood back up. Now to figure out where we are. We're in the Soul Society. Nell chirped and skipped over to them. It's a death sentence to Hollow, but the home of the Shinigami. Doesn't that kind of put you in a bad place? He tapped the bone mask covering her head. Or are you human enough for them not to care? Nope, I'm probably dead. She leaned over Ichigo. Shinigami aren't a flexible bunch. They feel hollows are bad and a rancor are worse. You're not. At least this version of you isn't. I'm an oddball. She opened her mouth wide and an unnatural amount of drool poured down on Ichigo. What are you doing? My saliva can heal people a little. She wiped her mouth. Give me a moment and I'll get your hand inside. I'm good thanks. Don't be a baby. He held up his unscathed hand. I heal quick on my own. He cringed as she spit out another mouthful of fluid on the carrot. If these Shinigami guys are so quick to kill, why are you with Ichigo? Until I met Ichigo and his friends, I thought all Shinigami were bad guys, and hollows just wanted to be left alone in the desert of Wako Mundo. She scratched where the crack in her mask had healed some. Although, meeting the Espada made me think maybe we're the bad guys. My brain's kind of weird right now. I'm knowing stuff I didn't think I knew. He lifted Ichigo up and draped an arm over his shoulder, the slime sticking to his back. If what she was telling the truth, he needed to make sure she stayed close and safe. Ex-Espada or not, she'd proven whose side she was on. Jiraiya would probably yell at him for trusting so easily, but because her mask had stopped mending, she wasn't a threat. He could afford to have faith in her, and he'd keep a careful eye out for a potential trap. I'll protect you, Nell. I promise. She gave him a big toothy grin which he mirrored. So, you have any idea which way we should go? She shrugged her shoulders and started off in a random direction. Shifting Ichigo's weight more evenly across his shoulders, Naruto followed after the marching Arankor. He never noticed the crimson eyes watching them from the underbrush. Aizen stared off the balcony overlooking the pearl-white desert of Wako Mundo. Something beautiful developed from the infinite vastness of it all under an unending night sky. The stillness it possessed allowed him to compartmentalize his thoughts or simply bestow a moment to enjoy the silence. For the first time, in perhaps hundreds of years, genuine surprise tickled his thoughts. While not want to become giddy at the thought of godhood, the idea decades of planning and goals could suddenly shift, or even his consideration of it shifting, stirred a speck of excitement to slowly build in his chest. His singular goal up to this point had been to transcend the barrier between Shinigami and Hollow. Neither the Holophid Shinigami, like Ichigo and the other visored with their masks, nor his own Arankor, ever achieved a true nullification of the differences between their respective races. Obtaining that form, something new and apart from old creation, would bestow him with the power to rise to the throne of the Spirit King. Kurosaki had unwittingly promised to be his sole obstacle. He'd savored the idea of a climatic battle between him and the hybrid youth. The human child, born with a soul naturally processing both the powers of Shinigami and Hollow, against himself, the transcendent. It should have been a battle of gods. The strange grey man changed all of that with a simple, unsubstantiated and likely impossible proclamation. Yet, the one aspect teasing at the truth was the creature's insistence on Orihime. The girl's mysterious power carried a potency strong enough to reject any event. He had merely utilized her to repair a cracked Hijoku, but if he were to use the omnipotent sphere to enhance her abilities, yes, the prospect promised intriguing results. Ironically, if used to reform creation, she truly would trample upon God's domain as he once claimed. I see my words have got you thinking, my future ascendant. The Earl gazed up at the eternally full moon as its pale glow reflected brightly off his glasses. I am surprised to see you again so soon, my guest. I was so afraid you wouldn't sleep tonight if I didn't offer an explanation. A future god requires a great deal of sleep. Your concern is appreciated but unneeded. Aizen rested his forearms on the balcony's banister. Your proposal, while vague, does have traces of believability. Tell me, what have you figured out so far? You want to use the Hijoku to bolster Orihime's powers. Doing so would allow you to essentially reject the world itself. However, her abilities, no matter how strong, lack the quality to actually create. There is another piece to this puzzle. Even with no visible neck, the Rotund man still nodded. I will save the full story until another time. However, you should know I was defeated by a man during the flood and his powers laid the seeds to my second defeat. The creature's gloved hand clenched slightly. This man, blessed in power and spirit, originated from another world separate from our own. This world is home to many people with the ability to mix their spiritual powers with their mortal bodies. They would provide fuel for the Hijoku. No, they would provide an army of abnormally powerful hollows. The Earl rocked back on his heels and clasped his hands behind his back. Because their spiritual energy is tied to their physical powers, it is diluted. So while it would sufficiently attract hollows who wish to feed on their souls, they would be unable to fight back an invasion. They would die, strengthen our current forces, and if not completely consumed, become powerful hollow themselves. Transforming them into a Arankor would increase the benefits even further. However, my Espada have left the Shinigami scrambling. I see little need to widen the already considerable gap. Overconfidence ruins the most solid framework. It is not that I believe I cannot be defeated. It is that our efforts could be focused on matters not already well developed. You underestimate how powerful these humans are free of their mortal coil. The Earl cocked his head to the side, so his leer took on a dangerous glint. Or were you unaware of the young man who assisted in the substitute Shinigami's escape? Aizen smiled deepened knowingly. His powers combined with Ichigo Kurosaki's only allowed them to escape a mere number 5. A slow deep chuckle rumbled out of the Earl's clenched teeth. And tell me, my little pup, how many Shinigami have their powers fully intact when first awakening as a soul before they even acquire their Zanpakuto? The Earl turned back to the moon as the traitorous Shinigami's eyes hardened. Yes, the scamp survived against your precious Espada within a mere hour of materializing in the afterlife. I see. Aizen pushed himself up to his full height as he reverted his gaze out across the expanse of Waco Mundo. For them to pose any difficulty, they would need to stand at least at the average captain's level of power and boast greater skill. And do you know how strong he was in his world? The third strongest and their greatest champion, he and the 3 others with him have the power to close that so-called considerable gap of yours. He hopped and faced Aizen fully. Do not fret, I shall keep them suitably entertained and out of our way. By attacking their home? If they make it that far, yes. It will at least disguise the true reason for our invasion. Which is? Your cage bird is only half of the columns to our altar. In that world, there is another who has control over life and death. His ringed eyes allow him to bridge the soul to its resurrection, to control life and death. Ratsu Unohana rested her hands on both sides of the unconscious Hinata's head. For whatever reason, Lee felt reassured by the woman's presence. Maybe it was because she had been the one to finally get Hinata-san to stop shaking and bleeding, or maybe she reminded him of Sakura-san and how she cared for a patient. Unlike his crush, however, the woman carried an awe-inspiring calm. He had, admittedly, been unyouthfully difficult. 3 other medical Shinigami failed to ease his teammates' suffering, while Gaara searched for their captain, and each failure encouraged more threatening behavior. Hinata-san was strong, but vulnerable right now, and required a friend's protection. It would not do for her too before she could reunite with Naruto. Still, he should not have smashed that desk in frustration. Unohana stepped back from a far more peaceful Hinata and walked over to him with a polite smile. She is okay now. This is excellent news, Shinigami-san. Please, Lee-san, keep your voice down. A silent finality underscored the kind tone. I have helped ease the pain and forced her into a deep sleep. She will recover fully in a few days after the damage heals. Lee watched Hinata for a moment. Her delicate face was still now. Not scrunched up in pain like it had been for most of the day. She really did look like she rested peacefully. He exhaled slowly and a tired smile found its way to his face. I am sorry, thank you. Arataicho said she mumbled something was wrong with her eyes. Can you tell me anything about them? Lee shook his head slowly. They were a secret from their entire team. He only knew of their existence because of the physical changes. Had she even utilized them prior to now? It would be impossible for her to not fully train an ability she risked everything to obtain. No, she most definitely had activated her evolved bloodline numerous times. I do not know the full extent of her taijutsu. Naruto-kun would know more if he were here. I know the normal Byakugan allows the user to see almost a complete circle around them. It also allows them to see the internal chakra paths. She evolved hers with the help of our village's greatest medic Nin. Unfortunately, what this ultimately achieved I do not know. I see. Will she be okay from now on? The same problem will occur if she uses them again, and the consequences could be more severe. What? Lee's heart climbed into his throat. Why? It is likely because the amount of data she could collect was drastically limited by her human body. Mayuri Kuritsuchi strode in with his normal maniacal grin. You've provided me with an interesting specimen, Unohana. I will enjoy seeing how her brain and ocular tissue relay information to each other. I assume the rest of her body is normal for a Shinigami, so I will probably simply remove her head to make storage easier. The temperature in the room plummeted as Gaara stepped out of the doorway's shadow. His aura soaked the room with a coarse atmosphere, as if he'd summoned an invisible sand. Lee wasn't sure when he'd positioned himself in front of the slumbering girl, but his own power swirled through his veins like he'd released the first 2 of his inner gates. The painted-faced man's smile lacked any humor or kindness. His mere presence made Lee's skin crawl. Hello captain or not, you do anything more than help her, Kuritsuchi, and I will kill you. A bold proclamation from the fledgling captain. The mad scientist's own presence crept up and pushed against the sand user. I hear you used to house a demon in you. Perhaps I should cut you open and see what sort of changes it had on your anatomy. Gentlemen. Unohana smiled, but hidden under the kind surface was a frigid sharpness. No power emanated from her, only the certainty of death. I ask that you calm down so you don't disrupt my patient. The room settled into an uneasy silence. Gaara and Mayuri eyed each other begrudgingly until the latter sighed and waved his hand dismissively. I am a scientist. I have no time or interest in doing something that doesn't further my pursuit of knowledge. You do seek to improve things, however. Unohana moved over to Hinata and pulled the sheet up tighter around her neck. Mayuri's lips stuck out in a strange half-snarl. I seek to improve what is interesting or necessary. The fate of some girl with a headache does not fall into either category. Then, perhaps I should seek out Kisuke Urahara. Her smile didn't drop, but the challenge in her voice rang clearly. Mayuri's scowl became angrier. I may let her die out of spite. I doubt you would want to be labeled a failure. He let out another sigh and pulled up a stool. Wake her up. I need to know what this ability is supposed to actually do. Lying on his belly under low-hanging branches, Naruto struggled to keep his breath soft. His lungs burned and his heart beat painfully against the ground. Nell, wide-eyed in terror, stared at him from her hiding spot 10 feet straight ahead. Similarly positioned under the foliage, she kept her smaller arms wrapped around Ichigo in a protective embrace. The white-clad leg of Tezra stepped gently onto the dirt between the two groups. It may have reduced his energy to near-useless levels, but leaving those clones behind and transformed as part of the environment saved them. He knew the pig or someone would show up eventually, and by having the clones both survey and misdirect, bought them a chance to stay out of the Aranker's path. Until the bastard got bored and started firing destructive red blasts into the forest at random. He tried to stay ahead and hidden, but with nothing left in the tank and 2 bodies to carry, he only scraped enough time to hide when the explosion stopped. He'd put Nell and Ichigo in the safest spot he could find and then moved to the next best position. Naruto bit down on his thumb and traced a bloody digit against a nearby tree trunk. One Bunshin managed to figure out how to work around the absence of chakra when attempting to construct a barrier around their hunter. It needed a lot of work and the lack of power made it flimsy as hell. He just needed to get his hands on some ink and paper. Then, he should be able to get the sealing process working as smoothly as when he was alive. For now, he'd have to settle on using blood and semi-working traps. Ezra's skin just needed to be softer than his master's. Springing out from cover, Naruto swung his leg up and smashed his shin square into the Aranker's face. Tezra stumbled back and the blonde gripped his arm, flinging him into the tree with the seal. The text stretched from the seal and ensnared him like a bastardized sealing tag as Naruto snatched his sword away and prepared to stab down. He froze. Shinigami create Zanpakuto, a sword that is an extension of their soul. This won't hurt you, will it? He didn't need to phrase it like a question. Why would my own power harm me? If it did anything, it would merely trigger an involuntary resurrection. That what you call the transformation that turns you into the demon pig. Crude, but not entirely incorrect. Digging deep, he summoned one clone and passed the blade over. Run as far and as fast as you can. The Bunshin nodded and sprinted away. I will still be able to kill you without my Zanpakuto. Tezra leaned forward against the struggling bindings for effect. You have no means to defeat me. Naruto bit his lip. Ichigo's sword might work, but if it didn't, Tezra would know exactly where they were. Hell, the creep could be playing capture just for them to appear. Sage mode might work with the forest around him, but it required him to be calm and in control. If he could only pull a little demonic chakra he could power a Rasengan, but even after 3 attempts nothing bubbled to the surface. I'll just pummel you until you stop twitching. Smoke burst all around them and Naruto felt someone drag him away by the arm. Grab your friends and follow me. Naruto paused for only a moment before following the voice's directions. He scooped up the 2 and followed the wispy outline out of the smoke. Emerging from the fog, his eyes widened as a shock of dark pink nearly red hair bobbed with the woman's every step. His throat tightened painfully and he nearly stumbled. She made it to this side as well. Kaio hadn't said anything, but maybe he didn't know. Could something that awesome happen in the middle of all this crap? Saw Sakura. The woman glanced over her shoulder, the brown frames of her glasses offsetting her crimson eyes. It's Karen. A sigh filled the office as the hot summer air blew through the open windows, carrying in the sounds of shops and civilians at street level. The top sheets from the many stacks of papers were caught in the zephyr and sent sailing across the room, covering the framed pictures resting upon the stands lining the walls. Another sigh as a shadow crept up over the sheets and removed them. The glare of the sun hiding all but the outlines of the people immortalized behind the glass. How can paperwork build up so fast just because I'm not here in the mornings? You'd think after a year having a team it wouldn't still be so troublesome. Rakudame Shikamaru Nara propped his head up on his fist as the shadow tendrils replaced the papers on their original piles. His attention wandered back over to the pictures and like so many other times, he found himself moving to stand in front of them. Picking up a random one, a smile flickered across his face. It was one of his favorites. Tamari had her hair down loose and a sweet look on her face as she held his arm. It was taken right after their wedding before the party that had left over half of Konoha with a week-long hangover. Ever since its destruction and the tough years spent in the isolated Yuzu no Kuni base, whenever there was even the slightest means to celebrate, the village made sure to do so on a grand scale. Its population was small enough after the possessed Kyuubi's second attack that most of the people knew each other, so what normally was spent between family and friends swelled into a whole village affair. Someone got married, party in the streets. Someone was going to be a parent, party in the streets. Someone was promoted, party in the streets. A new type of ramen was put on the menu, party in the streets. The Raikage came to visit, big party in the streets. And the Raikage visited often. His eyes darted over to another picture and a sad half-smile hung on his lips. It was from that night. Honestly, it was a horrible picture. Shino looked like he was going to drop dead, he looked like a mummified pineapple, and Hinata had her sad eyes locked on Naruto, while he and Lee forced smiles. It was dark too, and only Naruto's orange stood out. There had been a lot of other pictures that night, funny and heartwarming. But this one was the only one with them as a group. As short-lived as it had been, the team had been dear to him. That night, Naruto made the comment that he should strive to be the next Hokage. At first, Shikamaru couldn't help but think it was a joke. The look in those blue eyes though was nothing but encouraging. For Naruto, who had devoted his entire life to the goal of attaining the title, to have complete faith in him, he couldn't say no to the idea as troublesome as it was. He set the picture back down and walked back to his desk. It had been over 7 years now. Konoha was rebuilt and the next generation of ninjas already sat in the academy, only a few years shy of Genin. Many were already training hard, inspired by the great ninjas who defeated the demon god Madara. His team was an example of that. While it was by no means official, he had been training 4 specific kids for over a year. The energetic Namikaze twins, the scarily resourceful Naruto Yamino, and the cool and strict Hiru Sarutobi were either the team from heaven or hell. He still hadn't figured out which. It had been Iruka and Anko's suggestion, which rapidly turned into them convincing all the other parents and telling him he would be their sensei. There wasn't a lot of point arguing with him. Hiru was his sensei's daughter and a no-brainer, and Naruto was joined at the hip with her. The only questionable two were the Namikaze twins, Jiraiya and Tsunade, and their endearing personalities and skills quickly put any doubts aside. Lacking doubts didn't really quell a lot of the emotions they brought up though. They had been a surprise. Minato and Kushina were no exceptions to that. Apparently, the necessary preventative measures had been incomplete or something similar to that. Kushina had been hit with a lot of crippling emotions when she found out, more so than anyone else. She spent the first month buried in depression derived from guilt and bounced back to it frequently during her pregnancy. Once the kids were born, she smothered them in love and affection and spent every moment trying to be the best mother she could be. She never let them see her smile full while she watched them play. And her and Minato tried to hide their shared looks of pain whenever Naruto Yamino's name was mentioned. There was never a day they failed to visit the memorial stone. It was a more intense version of what many of them felt and a question everyone that lost a friend and loved one asked. Does one celebrate life to honor the dead or remain in sorrow for what the deceased never experiences? Minato was a little better off than her. He suffered many of the same emotions, but his regret of not being there for Naruto was diminished by his temporary death. Kushina was weighed down by constant regrets, although honestly, Shikamaru read the old reports and notes from the Sandaime about her long-term mission. The Uzumaki never really had a choice. Had she attempted to fight it, she would have been dead and Naruto would have wound up en route under Danzo's control. Only her compliance had allowed the Sandaime to sway the Fire Daimyo's opinions away from giving Danzo her son. You're thinking really loud again. Shikamaru looked up as Tamari walked in. Her stomach slightly swelling under her shirt. And why are there so many papers? Are you slacking off again? When had that stern look of hers become so endearing? Team training went longer than normal. She gave him a look of withering disbelief but shook her head and gave him a hug. You want to go get lunch then? Sure. A strong wind blew in from the open window, kicking up papers and knocking over the pictures closest to the edge. Shikamaru groaned and dropped his forehead into the nape of her neck. You really need to get a paperweight. She lightly pushed him away and moved toward the mess. Come on, I'll help you get it picked up. This one will need a new frame. She held up a group picture, Naruto's face hidden under a spiderweb of cracks. While unsurprising and a little disappointing, my hypothesis is correct. I am interested in seeing exactly how this ocular ability of yours works in conjunction with the enhancements from the second experiment. Are you sure you wouldn't be open to being a permanent test subject? I am very generous for those with unique abilities. No, Kuritsuchi-san. Hinata offered a small bow in apology. I have prior obligations. How disappointing. Hinata glanced at Lee doing handstand push-ups in the corner. His single finger effortlessly supported his entire frame even at the 1000th dip. She was grateful he took her suggestion to heart and burned off his anxious energy. It allowed her to focus entirely on the conversation instead of his worried stares. R remained at the entrance. Even with his arms folded and his eyes closed while his chin rested on his chest, he radiated a dangerous awareness, ready to lash out the instant something wrong occurred. Kuritsuchi-san seemed well aware of it and almost appeared to relish it. The only thing keeping the scientist in check was Unohana-san's pacifying presence. I'm sorry. Hinata clasped her fingers tightly to prevent them from fidgeting. But what was your hypothesis? Mayuri stretched out a long thin finger. The long obsidian fingernail stopped inches in front of her forehead. Your brain can't keep up. He retracted his finger and placed it against his skull. It's not developed enough. Lee paused in mid-dip and the entire room focused on Mayuri. For consistency's sake, I will refer to the visual range of this taijutsu as your sphere. When human, your maximum outreach was a sphere with a 10-foot diameter. He picked at his ear. Since it is tied to how much energy you could produce and the limitations of the human anatomy are now absent, with a few rudimentary calculations, I surmise your sphere's base diameter now spans 500. Hinata's mouth dropped slightly. 500 feet. It took extreme focus to take in all of the information from the technique when she was alive more alive. How can I have that much energy? The field you generate requires such little energy no one sensed you activated, which means you unleashed little of your Ryoku. Considering it is not unusual to be aware of a seated officer's fully released Ryatsu a mile out, 500 feet would be simple to accomplish. Excuse me, Kuretsuchi-san. Lee let his feet drop to the floor. What are Ryatsu and Ryoku? Ryoku is the spiritual energy found in chakra. Gaara only bothered to open his eyes. Ryatsu is the pressure or intensity it creates when in use. It is your power, and as such, its color, shape or in rare cases, element is entirely unique to you. A sufficient, albeit basic, description of the two, not that knowing will correct the issue. Hinata's lips dipped into a faint frown. Like chakra, she could probably learn to limit the range of her technique to safe levels. 10 feet provided plenty of time in a close-range fight, given her reflexes, especially with the flexibility she gained from Danzo's experiments. The sphere's limitation did make it difficult to fight with anyone at a distance, but by stretching the sphere into a single direction, she could sweep it around her almost instantly to detect and then focus on a faraway opponent. It was merely her own lack of experience that caused her problems in her final fight. Did she need to though? They were no longer ninja. The sword on Gaara's back showed he had taken to the role of a Shinigami, but was that his choice? Did she need to make the same choice? Would she even serve a viable role? Hinata-san, are you still with us? Anohana asked. I am trying to wrap my head around all of this. She sucked in a breath. I believe I should be able to control my technique now that I am aware of the power difference. Incorrect. Mayuri shook his head. In a normal technique, certainly, you can control how much Ryoku is invested in it to decide its power. However, because this ability is tied directly into your biology, you would have to limit your Ryatsu. I forget not everyone can make the same jumps in logic as I. What are you saying, Kuretsuchi-san? I said 500 feet barely required Ryoku. Barely drawing on your energy means you are not generating Ryatsu. By unleashing your Ryatsu your sphere will expand to match its power. Hinata's heartbeat quickened. You're saying 500 feet is my minimum? Correct. And since you do not fully understand, Ryatsu is more than simple pressure. It destabilizes an opponent, can assist in repelling weaker attacks, and fortifies your own physical capabilities. Even when it lacks a visible aura, Ryatsu is directly proportionate to your battle strength. It is your power in action. His head tilted to the side. In case you don't fully grasp your situation, you will naturally release your Ryatsu when you fight, and when you do your sphere will expand. Hinata forced herself to swallow the dryness in her mouth. So if I have to fight, I can't use my eyes. Mayuri's eye lit up with glee as his grin widened. That or you could let me tinker with you. The sun lazily sunk into the horizon, painting the sky in orange and red as Naruto followed Karen out of the forest into a small farming field, housing a small shack at its center. A giant of a man leaned over a modest fire pit as he stirred the contents of a kettle. Naruto's stomach growled as the aroma drifted over to him. It could be socks at this point. The majority of Ichigo's legs dragged in the dirt. It had taken all of Naruto's remaining strength to just keep him moving forward. Thankfully, Nell was happy to walk along with the Karen woman, and thankfully, their rescuer easily stayed a dozen steps ahead of Tezra. Often turning at random, even doubling back a few times, she led them far away from the Arankor like she knew exactly where he was at all times. Bed him into the hut. Karen led Nell over to a stool by the fire. I'll start healing him up. Jugo, can you give him a hand? The giant carefully scooped Ichigo up and carried him in before Naruto could even offer to help. The weight finally off his shoulders, Naruto's legs gave out and he barely caught himself with his shaky hands. Sweat dripped from his face onto the dirt. Thanks, big guy. Naruto sucked in a deep breath and looked up at Karen. And thank you. It's alright, Naruto. Karen knelt down in front of him. When was the last time you ate? I think 7 years. It was definitely before I died. He sat back on his knees then blinked. Wait, how do you know who I am? She adjusted her glasses. I'll explain everything tomorrow. Chapter 4. In the beginning, sleep didn't come easily. He would wake up in a cold sweat, wondering how badly Suna smoldered in the aftermath of Shukaku's rampage. It always took a moment for him to remember he no longer jailed the One Tail. However, every slumber lasted a little longer, and in a few weeks, he slept through the entire night. Only the destruction of his village brought back the insomnia, and that passed with the destruction of Danzo's army. Tonight was the first night in 4 years he couldn't sleep. Mayuri's lab detected the Ryatsu signature of a powerful Arankor Enter Soul Society, far west of the Sirte city walls. That alone warranted attention, yet what bothered him was the two presences they detected arriving an hour earlier. Scanners identified one as the substitute Shinigami, Ichigo Kurosaki. The 12th Division could not identify the other one, but Mayuri pointed out it possessed a similar demonic taint to his own, only significantly more potent. While his beast ranked the lowest of the tailed beasts, the demonic quality of Shukaku's chakra never felt different from the others he'd encountered as Kazukiage. The Kyuubi, infamous as a being of pure hatred, was the sole exception, and from what Lee and Hinata described, Madara's transformation did as well. He desperately wanted to believe the Ryatsu belonged to the former. The looming war with Aizen provided enough difficulties without adding in a crazed Uchiha with the powers of all 10 beasts combined. The fact that whoever arrived did so with Ichigo Kurosaki gave him some hope. Regardless, it made him too anxious to sleep. He wanted to set out now and face whatever awaited him on the outskirts of Rukongai. The captain commander ordered him to wait until morning and see if more rancor could be detected. The aged leader didn't want him falling into a trap, and Gaara respected both the logic and the man. He would wait restlessly, staring up at the stars filling the night sky. Gaara-san, may I speak with you for a while? Lee leapt up onto the roof next to him. I would like to ask you some questions and make a request. Certainly. Thank you. Lee sat down cross-legged, then joined Gaara's stargazing. It is amazing how similar the sky is between our world and this afterlife. Yes. I've always found the similarities between the worlds to be comforting whenever I worry about Tamari and those I can no longer protect. You could say it makes me feel less lonesome. Gaara brushed the feeling away. What is your request? I wish to go with you to find Naruto and his companion. We don't know if it is Naruto. All the more reason for me to travel with you. Lee clenched his fists in his pants. Please, I will not be a burden. It takes time to get used to your body as a soul, an issue potentially even more complex due to your previous body's inability to use chakra. Gaara-san, I could not form chakra because my spiritual energy was too great to balance. The Exunanin's normally deadpan expression perked up in surprise. Given your physical prowess, I find that difficult to believe. As did I, however, the findings came directly from Tsunade-sama herself. Fair enough. Lee bowed his head. Gaara-san, I know there is much I need to learn about this body and its relation to my powers. However, I cannot sit around while my friend and teammate may be in danger. Gaara studied him carefully. The power he'd subconsciously released when Mayuri threatened Hinata hinted at a much deeper well of power. He was also skilled enough he shouldn't die if they were temporarily split up. It wouldn't hurt, and besides, Lee would probably follow him anyway. At least this way he could prevent the Taijutsu user from causing a ruckus or getting lost. I will let you die if you can't pull your own weight. Lee let out a short laugh. You say that with far too much kindness for me to believe it, Gaara-san. A hint of a smile tugged at Gaara's lips. It was odd to speak so freely with a man he'd once almost killed. Granted, the same happened with Naruto, but the situation with Lee remained different. His actions against him had been vindictive and nearly ruined his life, a fate honestly more cruel than death for someone who had overcome so much. Granted, it worked out in the end, but conversing on friendly terms still felt strange. You've changed, Gaara-san. Perhaps you merely perceive me differently. Gaara shifted his weight so he could look out over the city. Some Shinigami walked hand in hand while others stumbled out of the small shops laughing with a drunken blush. What are your questions? I would like to know what happened to you after your death. However, I am sure such a youthful tale requires time. So instead, do you know how you came to this place? No. And until you two arrived, I have found no one else from our world, and I spent much of my time seeing if my brother came to this side. So you have no clues or memories? Not until I materialized as a soul. His eyes narrowed as a subconscious chill ran up his spine. No, that is incorrect. I do remember feeling someone standing over my spirit as it slept. You will have to explain these terms to me, but I felt something similar to that as well. What did the presence feel like to you? Evil. Hashiro Hitsugaya was the youngest captain in the history of the Gate 13. Barely a teenager in appearance, he had crafted his personality to be serious and emulate a man far beyond his years. He detested childish things or having such things equated to him. Cold as the icy powers he wielded, people respected him for his hardworking attitude and level-headed maturity. They were wise enough to remain quiet about his lack of height. However, even through years of meticulous shaping of his persona, he could not keep the surprised look off his face or hide the youthful emotions in his turquoise eyes. "Commander, what do you mean?" "I meant what was said, Captain Hitsugaya. You will replace me as the commander of the Gate 13. The old man rolled his neck with a few pops as if emphasizing his age. "I have served since its creation, and to this day no Shinigami has been able to surpass me. Were something to happen in this war that would render me unfit to lead, a dangerous emptiness would be left that future enemies could exploit." Regaining his demeanor, Hitsugaya's lips dipped into a frown. "While I strive to improve, I am hundreds, if not thousands, of years from even approaching you, sir." Yamamoto nodded and stood. Clasping his hands behind his back, he left the gnarled cane against his desk and walked out to the balcony of his office. The midnight moonlight soaked down into his uniform as the city below sparkled with the same vibrancy as sand along a beach. Immediately upon Kisuke Urahara's exile, all records in his division, the 12th Division, were confiscated for review. At the time, we feared he had been delving into holification research and did not want anyone else to come across it. However, Urahara's contributions to our technologies were without equal, so recklessly destroying anything we came across would be unwise. "You sorted the information personally then?" "Yes, I should have found it odd that I never found any further information on holification beyond what Aizen submitted as evidence." The aged Shinigami trailed off for a moment, as if past regrets were playing out behind his closed eyelids. Regardless, most of the information was handed back to the division and continued to be developed under the direction of Mayuri Kuretsuchi. "You said most. Did you ever find it odd that when Urahara arrived to assist your group battle the Rancor in the human world a short while ago, he toyed with an espada using only Shikai?" The Shiro remained silent as he moved to his feet. The espada were the strongest Rancor in Aizen's growing army. He, a captain, had been forced to use his Bankai and still struggled to keep up with his opponents. The members in his team lacked the skill of a second release and were completely overwhelmed. Yet, Urahara effortlessly handled the giant powerhouse named Yami. I had assumed he was simply stronger. I have never seen anything beyond the Shikai of Yukitake, Kairaku, or you. You three are strong enough to not need it. Yes, we are stronger due to rare Zanpakuto and highly refined skills. But the primary cause is due to hundreds of years more growth than the rest of the Gate 13. Urahara, while he possesses the former two, has only slightly more years than many of you current captains. You believe he developed a means of accelerating his growth?" The Shiro did not feel the need to phrase it as a question. "I have proof that is what he did. It is no secret Mayuri Kuretsuchi has been able to modify his Zanpakuto. Urahara developed the original procedure for his blade. Kuretsuchi just alters his sword's poisons and effects. Nothing he does increases his overall power. Urahara did, and the improvements were not limited to his sword." Toshiro paused behind the hunched-over man, the breeze blowing through his spiky white hair. "As you know, we limit our powers when we enter the human world to diminish the impact our presence makes. High amounts of Reiatsu can awaken powers or even harm humans and others with less spiritual power. He theorized that by bathing a sedated soul and its Zanpakuto in Roraishi for a constant and prolonged period of time, their powers would grow significantly faster than what simple time and experience could provide. You believe he did this on himself? Given the detail of his notes and his power, I am certain of it. Then why has this not been utilized? Humans gain health out under the sun, but too much of it will cause them to die. Unless a soul is already powerful or in tight control of the power they possess, the influx of spiritual particles destabilize the soul and either cripple or kill the recipient. While it is true many Shinigami could survive, most would be left a shell of their former selves. I believe even Urahara himself spent a great deal of time recovering. Kuretsuchi surmises that the only way to diminish the negative aspects of the technology would be to place the recipient into a near-death state and significantly reduce the frequency by which the Reishi is administered. Ashiro's face remained blank as a knot formed in the pit of his stomach. The process sounds like it would take a long time. Over 300 years is the current estimate. Aizen's attack could be at any time. And whether we are victorious or defeated, regaining Sarate's strength in 300 years is far better than helping others fill the gap. Yamamoto glanced over his shoulder and cracked an eye the color of a burning ember. You are still young. Your powers, while impressive, are incomplete. You wield a dragon as your Zanpakuto, a rarity among rarities. In time, you will surpass me with proper training. Try as he might, Toshiro's jaw clenched at the idea of sitting the fight out. He remembered his oldest and most cherished friend, her blank eyes punctuating the shock on her face as her blood dripped down Aizen's blade. The traitor had been her captain, her idol. Before he left, Aizen toyed with her, stabbed her, and had done it with a smile on his face. Then, the man had the arrogance to call the attempted murder an act of mercy. Even now that she was physically recovered, her mind remained fractured between the truth and her own infatuation and denial of what her beloved captain did. No one deserved to cut the traitor down more than Hinamori, but with her unable to, it fell to him. And, no one wanted to do it more than him. Protocol 00 was designed to ensure the survival of Sarate and the Shinigami in the event of a cataclysm. Those selected are placed in a state of hibernation in a secured vault until a selected time. You and a few others will be the only ones to undertake Urahara's method and the subliminal training accompanying it. The rest will simply sleep until the time comes for them to awaken and follow the orders of those trained. The new captains led by you. Commander, I must refuse. A faint wisp of power floated through the air like the hint of smoke in the wind. I am sorry, Captain Hitsugaya. You cannot. The expansive hall almost shone with a silver hue. Ornate columns held up a marble ceiling, allowing for the walls to be mostly absent and show a blue sky leading forever into nothing. She sat in a similarly colored chair centered in the middle of the floor. Another was stationed directly across from the small table in front of her. The only other object was what her host called a piano, positioned at the edge of the room. Her host shuffled a deck of cards as he walked over and took the seat across from her. His white hair framed a thin intricate scar running through his left eye and down his cheek. He offered her a smile and placed the deck down on the table, tucking his gloved left hand in the folds of his black overcoat. I really appreciate you accepting my request to play cards, Hinata-san. He cut the deck. It's been forever since I had a chance to play with anyone. I don't mind. Although, I am still trying to understand all the rules. Thank you for being patient with me, Walker-san. He shook his head with a chuckle and began to distribute them evenly. I'm really impressed you still wanted to learn right now after everything else I told you. I mean, most people would need time to accept we're talking as spirits right now. And again, it's Alan. She nodded slowly as she picked up the cards. The concept of an inner world or mindscape wasn't too difficult for her to understand. Naruto-kun once explained it to her when talking about his relationship with the Kyuubi. The idea of it helped, considering that where they were seemed abstract since the hall sat in an endless blue sky. Besides, she knew Kuretsuchi-san already put her to sleep and was most likely cutting into her head right now. Do you have any questions about what I've told you so far? He studied his cards. Do you have any eights? Oh fish. I believe I understand the basic concept. She watched as he nimbly removed the top card. We share the same mindscape and you are my Zanpakuto spirit. You know all about me, but for some reason, I am unable to gain your memories. Our situation is unique because you are another person instead of a part of me. Yes. I will explain more about how my strength will be added to yours once you find my physical form. It's your turn. Do you have any fives? He blinked then shot her a mistrusting glare. You're not using your powers, are you, Hinata-san? No, Alan-san. He passed her 3 cards. Are you nervous about what is happening to your soul right now? I cannot be nervous when I have no choice. You could have told him no. Even if I do not join the Shinigami, I will help someone in trouble. I know I will activate my eyes if my attacker is strong and I will do it without thinking. She closed her eyes and smiled at him. Besides, I won't leave my team alone. I won't have Naruto-kun fight without me. Alan rested all his cards down on the table as a frown tugged at his pale lips. Your and Naruto's future was cut short like mine was. A humorless chuckle escaped from his mouth. Considering everything, maybe, I never even had one. Alan-san. There is a man lurking somewhere out in the darkness. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes. I don't know what his new plans are. I don't know when he will unleash them, but I do know you will get caught up in them, whether you choose to fight or not. Hinata-san, the gray man ascended to powers beyond what we thought possible. He surpassed death, and he killed my future. You must fear him. You must fear the Earl of Millennium. Lee slid into a low stretch as they prepared to leave. He peered out through the city's open west gate. Far beyond the districts, Naruto and his ally were fighting against a powerful foe. The thought of seeing his friend again filled him with excitement. No, this entire world with all its uniqueness filled him with excitement. While he missed the village dearly, there was so much promise in this new life. After their noble sacrifice against Madara, they were blessed with a second chance. Are you prepared, Gaara-san? I do not want to leave Naruto on his own any longer than needed. Agreed. The captain signaled for the guardian to begin opening the gigantic gate. If we run at top speed, we should make it to their last location in under 4 hours. Gaara Taicho. Lee spun out of his stretch toward the female voice calling out to his current teammate. Long and wavy orange hair twisted and fluttered in the air as she landed in front of them. Lee's mouth dropped an unnoticeable amount as she stood to her full height. A light pink scarf draped over her shoulders, offsetting the standard Shinigami uniform, which she left loose to an almost indecent degree, given her generous build. Yes, Ranjiku-san. Gaara remained stock still with his arms folded in front of him. Is there news from the commander? She stuck her lip out in a pout and sighed. Why do you think every time I come to see you it's on someone else's orders? Because it would be rude to ask what you wanted money for. I've never asked you for money. You invite me to drink with you and I always end up paying. It is the same thing. Lee blinked as he glanced from one to the other. It may be his imagination, but did Gaara have a slight teasing tone to his voice? It was so light, even unusual, he couldn't be sure. Certainly, he was not close with the ex-Kazakiage, but the conversation definitely carried a different feel than the Retide's normal interactions. What I was going to ask, Gaara Taicho. She playfully flicked a loose strand over her shoulder. Was if you wanted to spar when you got back. It's been a few months. It depends on what happens after this mission. I can make no promises. She huffed and looked to the side. You've said the same thing for the past month. A sly smile crept up on her face and she turned back to him. I'll pay for drinks afterward. I'll even wear one of those dresses you helped me pick out from the human world. That isn't necessary. He coughed lightly into his fist. And the shopping was because you knew it was my first trip into the human world. I had no choice but to follow you everywhere. Come on, you know you had fun. Gaara cracked a small smile and nodded until he caught Lee staring at him and the eternal deadpan snapped back into place. We need to be going. I will do my best to make time for a sparring session. Her smile widened ear from ear and she clapped her hands in front of her. Thank you. She began to walk away with a wave. Good luck on your mission. You'll have to introduce me to all these friends of yours that everyone is talking about when you get back. She leapt up onto the nearest rooftop and took off toward the center of the city. A face-splitting grin slowly appeared on Lee's face as Gaara turned with a sigh. The captain paused, an almost uncomfortable expression threatening to overcome the stoic neutrality of his features. Not a word. Lee's teeth started to show as the grin deepened. Yosh, Gaara-san. Lee's voice stayed at its normal volume. He spun on his heel and started for the exit. Yosh. Naruto stretched his arms over his head, letting out a yawn as the morning sunlight warmed his face. A good night's sleep always recharged his batteries and the stew from last night really hit the spot. He crossed his fingers in front of his chest. Page Bunshin no Jutsu. 100 clones popped into existence. He grinned and pointed a finger at the group. I want my control back to useful levels by noon. The mini-army shouted in confirmation and took off into the forest. While they worked on that, he could focus on getting some of his techniques back in working condition and see if every hand seal worked with his bod soul. Understanding his physical limits was a must, but he could test that while surveying the area. While he and Ichigo needed to get to the city as soon as the kid was able to, it would probably a few days so he might as well learn about his surroundings. Naruto started walking around the field with his hands folded behind his head. There were a lot of gardens, far more than two people could eat, even if one of them was a giant. Jugo stayed pretty quiet around him, but seemed to get along with animals really well. Birds kept fluttering down and landing on his shoulders all through dinner. He traveled around the back of the shack. A creature lunging for him so fast he stumbled back and landed on his butt. It landed on his chest and growled in his face, the hot animal breath causing his nose to scrunch up as his eyes closed. You have a pretty fancy costume there, Kyubi. That's not the stupid fox, it's his flesh prison. Another creature landed to the left of his face. Went and got yourself killed, eh, blondie? Naruto cracked his eye open. Hey, you're that crazy tanuki of Gaara's. I'm not Gaara's. I'm Shukaku, the wielder of the ultimate defense. You notice how he didn't dispute the crazy part? Naruto looked for the source of the voice and spotted a red ape with four tails crouched on a log. Let him up, Jayuki. He's just got Kurama's power. I'm not so sure. The eight-tailed ox crawled off. I suppose that arrogant malevolence of his isn't on the surface at least. Naruto sat up and blinked as more beasts came out from an additional room connected to the back of the shack. 1, 2, 3 all of the tailed demons, but the Kyubi were present and shorter. They stood around knee-height and held what he assumed were their original forms. The one tail at least looked the same as when he fought it. They arrived shortly after Karen and I did. Jugo spoke as he came up behind him. They are no longer demons, just very intelligent animals. We still need to come up with a new word for us. The ape crossed his arms over his chest and puffed it out. Animals seems derogatory given who we are. How I mean what the hell. That was our reaction as well. The ox, Jayuki, laid down in the sunlight. We didn't think there was an afterlife for us. Guess some god decided we deserved it after the end we had. Just tell me you killed that bastard, Madara. Shukaku slammed its paws against the ground. People thought absorbing blood through my sand was bad, but at least I didn't eat them alive. Seriously though, you kill him. Naruto glanced down at his hand. He'd seen Madara pulled in before he did. The technique had expanded instantly, so there was no way for the last Uchiha to warp out. Yeah. He clenched his fist. I got him. Come on. Jugo motioned for Naruto to follow. I made breakfast. Naruto took one last look as the beasts moved into the forest. So what's your story? Naruto focused his attention back to his guide. Your friend knew who I was. All of Orochimaru's forces knew who you were. Naruto froze as adrenaline pooled into his bloodstream. Wait, no, they had more than enough opportunities to kill him already. They didn't mean him harm, or at least, they wanted something from him. Hugo, you ruined the big reveal. Karen put her hands on her hips as they came to the front. Now, he's not going to listen to anything we say. Sorry. She rubbed her forehead as he sat down and handed out breakfast. With a sigh, she joined him and motioned for Naruto to sit. It's alright, Jugo. Probably better we get the hard truth out of the way so we aren't hiding anything. She flashed a smile at the blonde. You haven't run away or attacked, so you must believe in us a little. Orochimaru did say he wasn't very observant. Orochimaru was probably too busy humping Sasuke to keep up-to-date information on me. Naruto grabbed a plate and nodded at Karen. I am surprised you saved me though, figure the snake would have had you guys hating my guts. Not at all. Orochimaru-san, he was fascinated by your progression and excited by the prospect of you, a fellow Sanin's disciple, facing Sasuke-kun. Naruto shoved a mouthful of food in his mouth. He didn't want to talk about Sasuke. It would dredge up all the mistakes he made regarding his first friend. It would only lead to even more topics that broke his heart. What do you two want to know? Info is why you saved me, right? Did anyone ever stop my body? Jugo never looked up from his plate, but worry washed over his expression. Danzo sealed my humanity to unleash the full terror of my cursed blood. My last conscious image were Konoha's walls. I can only imagine the monster I became. Naruto almost shot to his feet. He was that monster. That thing nearly killed Hinata. The damage I caused allowed Danzo to he wouldn't have had to kill her. She wouldn't have had to deal with what it felt like being a monster. That was you? Naruto's voice barely surpassed a whisper. No, what attacked your village was Jugo's power, completely unrestrained by the gentle person you're talking to now. Danzo was the monster. He drained Jugo to a lifeless husk to build an army of monsters. Karen shook as she clenched her eyes shut. That soulless bastard sealed Jugo away so his greatest nightmare materialized. Jugo never wanted to hurt anyone, but Danzo didn't care. That cruel man did anything to get what he wanted, anything. Jugo put a hand on her shoulder and gave it a reassuring squeeze as she silently wept. Naruto watched for a moment as bad memories twisted his stomach up into a knot. The Warhawk lacked any compassion for even his allies. He could only imagine what Danzo put them through. I stopped it, and then I stopped Danzo for good with the help of my friends. We took damage, Suna more than anyone, but we won. Karen wiped at her eyes with her sleeve. Good, that's good. Naruto forced a smile on his face. They didn't need to revisit bad memories any more than he did. So you guys were reborn as souls, found each other, and decided to shack up and raise tailed beasts then. Hugo shook his head with a horrified expression, while Karen laughed. What are you looking so upset for, Jugo? She punched him lightly in the arm. I'm a phenomenal catch. Thank you, Naruto Uzumaki. Jugo bowed his head. Thank you for ending the evil within me. So your curse didn't come over with you to this side? Thankfully, no. I am a simple farmer now, able to live in peace with nature and all of its creatures. Good. Naruto dove back into his food. This is really good. Thank you. Naruto. Karen almost appeared hesitant. How did you die? Were you an old man or was there an enemy more powerful than you? Naruto paused, chewing. There was another topic he wanted to stay far away from. Even though they won, it didn't feel like a victory. Heck, most of his fights in the end never felt like victories. Madara Uchiha, I killed him, but it took the lives of me, my sensei, and two of my closest friends. He swallowed down the bitterness. Apparently, I've been dead for 7 years, but only materialized yesterday. How about you two? We found ourselves here about 6 years ago without knowing how long it took to arrive. We moved way out beyond Rukongai because it was more peaceful. Rukongai? That is a part of Soul Society. Sarate, the city of the Shinigami, is in the center. Rukongai is a series of districts that encircles the city, and the farther from the city, the worse the districts get, with 80 being the worst. We're past that, safe and isolated by miles and miles of forest. Wow, so this place is pretty big. Did you guys figure everything out alone or did your Zanpakuto spirits help? Karen and Jugo shared a confused look. We don't have Zanpakuto or other spirits. Karen readjusted her glasses. You do? I just have the annoying spirit right now. Supposedly, his physical form is waiting for me in this Sarate place. Karen shook her head with a disbelieving smile. The reports were right, you are unpredictable. Renji Abarai always had a problem of aiming higher than he should. His captain once said he was like a monkey trying to capture the moon. It had gotten him into trouble more than once and he'd barely escaped death more than a few times. There probably wouldn't be any way out this time. When Ichigo's presence disappeared, he knew they were screwed. As one of the only two left standing from their group, he shifted the mission's goal from rescue to escape. They needed to get everyone out of Wako Mundo. He distracted his opponent and sent Ririshita out to gather Rukia and Chad. Ichigo's friend was far faster, while he was more durable. Now, he stood baring his fangs at his enemy whose strength easily overwhelmed his own. Blood matted his red hair and dripped down off his chin as he fought to keep his sword up in front of him. They may have been able to defeat the 8th Espada if the creep hadn't ran off. But this guy, he clearly outmatched him and hadn't even needed to draw his sword yet. The 4th Espada, Ulquiorra Cypher, pointed 2 fingers at him. Renji leapt to the side as a green blast of energy decimated the spot. "Why do you struggle, Shinigami?" The rancor emerged from the smoke. "Surely, you feel your death stands before you. Do you think with your menial powers you can delay me from reaching your comrades? Try this menial power on for size." Ban. Ulquiorra disappeared, the air around him reverberating from the sheer speed of his step. Renji's words died as the Espada shoved his hand through his heart. Gritting his teeth, the Shinigami gripped his Zanpakuto as tightly as he could and slashed down. Ulquiorra effortlessly knocked the blade to the side and flung Renji by the fatal wound in his chest. The 6th Division lieutenant crashed face down on a pile of rubble. Shakily reaching into the hem of his shahakusho, he pulled out a small box. They understood the risks coming to their enemy's headquarters. The exiled Shinigami, Kisuke Urahara, made arrangements in case things were worse than they could handle and provided him with an emergency contact device. Sucking in a shallow breath, he held it up in front of his mouth. "Can you hear me, Urahara? Did Ishida manage to retrieve Chad and Rukia?" His vision began to tunnel. "Urahara, are they safe?" He coughed up more blood and his body began to feel weightless. "Yes." Static crackled to life over the other end. "I have successfully managed to retrieve them. Ishida-kun is bringing them home as we speak." The voice paused for a moment. "Abarai-kun, do you have any message you want me to pass on?" Renji closed his eyes as the box slipped from his fingers. What more could he say, and who could he say it to? All the goals he would never obtain seemed like a distant desire now. All the friends he would no longer laugh with now lived on to fight for the future. He would die on the battlefield for the sake of his companions. There was no greater privilege than that. His only regret is that he would die alone, without taking his killer with him and helping his comrades achieve victory. "Abarai-kun, are you still there? Tell them to win, Urahara. Tell everyone to why." Ulquiorra stabbed his blade through the back of Renji's skull, permanently silencing him. Tsunade Namikaze scratched the back of her head as her younger twin meticulously dragged another kunai upon the wet stone for the 100th time that hour. He always got so stubborn about this stuff. "You know it doesn't matter how sharp they are if the ring is what always hits the target. I want them to stick even if my throw is off. You grind them much more and they'll be toothpicks." She crouched down next to him, grabbing one out of the pile he'd already sharpened. "I still don't get why you don't just stick with shuriken. You never miss with them. Dad says kunai are more versatile. Do you even know what that word means?" "I know it's a good thing. Lots of ninja talk about it." He held the kunai up in front of his nose, squinting his bright blue eyes. "I heard Mom crying last night." "Yeah." She'd heard it coming from the kitchen too. Mom never cried loud or in front of them, but every once in a while they'd catch her. When they asked, she would say it was the onions she had cut up for tomorrow's meal and hold up a bowl of them. Then she'd smile and send them back to bed with a hug. They always had a lot of onions around the time their brother fought Madara Uchiha and didn't come home. Jiraiya threw the blade at the closest tree and frowned when it hit flat and bounced off. He tugged lightly at his spiky red hair. Even if he was too serious for a temper tantrum, she knew he was getting angry trying to figure out what kept going wrong. He did everything the adult said to do. "Mom says you'll go bald if you keep pulling at your hair like that." She hit her fist against her palm as her face lit up in realization. "Why don't you just tie a bunch of kunai together? You can throw them like a shuriken, but still have that versatility thing." "Maybe." He flopped on his back and stared up at the cloudy sky. "If I learn how to make jutsu like Dad and Nichin, maybe I can think of one that always keeps the point in front. They could be defective." Tsunade grabbed another 2 by their rings and flung them at the same tree. Sinking in deep, the 3 formed a straight line vertically up the center of the tree. She grinned sheepishly. "Or not." He groaned loudly. "I can't believe you can already throw 3. It's bad enough Hiru can do it." He tilted his head to look at her. "Even Naru can get 2 at once. And none of us can do tree climbing yet, which you do easy. You'd think I could do at least 1 though." Her round face puffed up and she tightened the bandana holding her blonde hair in place. "Alright, Naru's dad always says Nichin would stay up all night until he got something down." She stomped over to a thicker tree to the right. "We're not going home until I can walk up this tree and you can get at least 1 kunai in." "But Tsunade." He shot to his feet, almost stepping on his pile of kunai. It will be dark soon and the other kids have said they've been seeing you know. Those chickens are just jumping at cat shadows. She steeled her storm blue eyes on the tree. Invisible monsters with glowing yellow eyes and weird growls don't exist. He gave his hair one last tug and sighed. They're probably right. He bent down and grabbed a kunai. Make sure you don't overdo it and blow up this tree like the one you did yesterday. I didn't blow it up. I just put a little crack in it. Little like the valley where Nichin fought the traitor. Naruto silently walked into the small shack and knelt down next to Ichigo. Nell was outside pestering Jugo as he worked in the fields, while Karen had left for the closest district with a functioning shop. She wanted to get some more bandages and make a few other trades with the surplus crops. She'd used up their supply getting him patched up. He doubted Ichigo's breathing could be so much better because of a bunch of bandages, but hey, whatever. The kid was on the mend. Although for the life of him, he couldn't figure out why his trench coat had changed into something similar to his black kimono, or why the black Daido now looked like a giant kitchen knife. How long have I been out? Ichigo groaned and cracked open an eye. It feels like we're in Soul Society. Yeah, the air is definitely more lively. Naruto grabbed a cup of water and helped Ichigo sit up. How much do you remember? Things kind of flashed through my head. He took the cup from Naruto and sipped at it. I mostly blacked out when where's Orihime? Naruto felt his throat tighten as panic set in Ichigo's brown eyes. The kid went through hell, the friends who went with him might be dead, and he ended up with nothing to show for it. He'd been there with a dead Hinata in his arms. If old lady Chiyo had worked out, and hopefully the same would happen for Ichigo. Nell opened a portal, something she called a garganta. We dove in, but the angry pork roast managed to fling her out. You left her? Ichigo grabbed Naruto by his collar and yanked it roughly. You left her behind with them. You were almost dead. I barely had enough energy to stand let alone fight. Nell gave us an exit and we took it. Orihime was with us until Tezra dove in after us and tossed her out. By then, there was nothing I could do in the freefall. That's a load of crap. You talked about being some ninja and how you were going to help me save everyone. Ichigo's body shook as his fist clenched tighter and his knuckles whitened. She could be dead because you ran away. Did you notice how the Arankor acted around her during the battle or were you too busy getting your ass kicked to see anything? He snatched Ichigo's wrist and easily pulled his hand away. They had multiple chances to hurt or kill her. Yeah, they toyed with her and got a little rough, but nothing bad enough to even cause a bruise. Tezra could have let her stay in the Garganta and then have killed all of us at the same time. Instead, he made sure to recover her. You're making a pretty big assumption. Noitra was a sadist. Look at what he did to Nell. If he was allowed to harm Orihime, he would have done it in front of you so you would suffer in your own helplessness. He let go of Ichigo and refilled the cup. Ichigo, they aren't allowed to hurt her. Ichigo's jaw tightened as his gaze cast downward on his heavily bandaged torso. And you realized all this in the middle of that fight. I had a teacher beat the skill of observation into my head. Naruto repressed a shudder. This one time he made a maze with clues inside a toad's stomach. I had to find all the clues and hints while trying to not be digested or killed by traps. Freakin' Iro-sensei. Ichigo faced him completely with a stern gaze. You swear you didn't abandon her? My first teacher believed that someone who abandoned their comrades were less than trash. If I thought for a second she would have been harmed, I would have made Nell send me right back into that desert. Ichigo searched his face for any sign of dishonesty. Taking the cup, the orange-haired youth resumed studying his lap. Your teacher sounds like a nutcase. He was, but I wouldn't have accomplished what I did without his training. Ichigo downed the water. You had some crazy moves during the fight. He set the cup on the floor and lied back down. Are those normal techniques for your world? Some are crazier, and all of them are cool, but mine are pretty unique. It helped I had a demon sealed in me. This world of yours sounds insane. Yeah. Naruto laughed. But it was home. Did you come here by choice? You seemed pretty confused when we first met. I died taking down someone who threatened to put the entire world under an eternal illusion. Naruto shook his head. What about you? What's your story? I'm just a substitute Shinigami who gained his powers through sheer luck. Substitute? Yeah, I still have a human body and live like any normal 15-year-old when I'm in the living world. I just have my soul removed when I need to fight. And you say my world is insane. I guess it's what you get used to. Are there a lot of people like you? No. I first gained Shinigami powers when Rukia transferred hers over to me to save my family. Long story short, I eventually awakened my own and she reclaimed hers. He grinned. I'm sure it sounds strange having a school kid fight monsters. You're still in school. Man, and the academy instructors called me slow. You're supposed to be in school until 18, jackass. 18. We graduate from the academy at 12 and that's still way too long. Naruto. Karen burst in through the front door, her chest heaving as sweat traced along every worry-created crease on her face. "We have a problem." Naruto shot up to his feet. "What is it?" "It's that Arankor who was hunting you. He's headed this way." She cast a glance at Ichigo. Now that the kid is awake, he's like a beacon with how much Ryatsu he's putting off. "How can you tell?" "I don't sense the pig. Detecting people has always been my specialty." She sucked in a calming breath and readjusted her glasses. "We can't move Ichigo fast enough to get away. We need a plan." Naruto frowned. So wherever Ichigo went, Tezzera could find them. Then the best bet would be to set up an ambush using him as bait. It should at least allow Karen and the other two time to get away. His control was better, so he shouldn't burn through his reserves as badly as before, and the clones had yet to dispel, which would give another boost. "You urge you go take Nell and the tailed beasts. Go find someplace far enough away you can safely hide. I'll do my best to get him away from the crops once he shows up. After I lead him away, whoever isn't with the group grabs Ichigo and heads for the city. I can fight." Ichigo struggled to sit up. "You can't take him on your own." "Really?" Karen quirked an eyebrow. "What are you going to do, trip him while curled up in the fetal position?" Ichigo scowled but didn't argue. "Karen, how much time do we have?" "Maybe 5 minutes. And sensing is your specialty?" "I've been running for an hour straight to get here." "Alright, change of plans." Naruto created a single clone that immediately dispelled to signal all of the others. Sitting down and crossing his feet, he closed his eyes and prepared for the onslaught of experience. "I need everyone to be quiet. This doesn't seem as effective as the first plan. I'm going to absorb all the improvements my clones have made. Being able to pull off my bigger techniques is the only chance we have. I also need paper and ink." "You going to write him?" An angry let Karen's head whipped around as all color left her face. He just exploded forward so fast I almost lost track of him. Naruto's gut twisted into a knot as he felt the presence appear and race straight for them. Damn it, his brain would have to work out all the information in the middle of the fight. Even with the knowledge, it would have been better for his actual body to have a chance to work it out. "Ichigo, stay inside and watch from the windows." Naruto climbed to his feet. "If, and only if, you see an opening where you can finish him off, do you jump in. You go as big as you can. Do not hesitate, even if I'm in the middle of it." "No way. I'm not going to sacrifice anyone." Naruto's lips tightened as he fought back the nervousness tickling his chest. "You worry about finishing off Tezzera. I'll be fine." He stepped outside, ignoring Ichigo's protests. There wouldn't be any opening. Naruto knew he needed to guide the fight away from everyone. The command was only to make Ichigo stay put. 100 visions flashed through his head, causing him to slightly stumble. How the hell didn't he notice the Bunshin trick as a kid? Facing the direction he knew Tezzera was coming from, Naruto exhaled slowly, allowing his thoughts to settle. Winning required 3 very important things: any variant of the Shunshin, his Adama Rasengan, and not giving the Arankor a chance to transform. It wasn't just the physical increase, the pig's power skyrocketed to the point his regular Rasengan only made him stumble. If he became the Warthog, any chance of defeating him flew out the window. I wonder what it would be like to actually fight without being the underdog for once. The air trembled as Tezzera appeared in the sky above the farm. Naruto's lips curled up into a feral grin. "Hey pork roast, you don't look very happy." He needed to get the bastard ground level. "I can't imagine spending all night trying to find your sword was fun. Come on, charge so I can Shunshin behind and smash a Rasengan upside your head." "You are an extremely aggravating individual." Tezzera unsheathed his Zanpakuto. "I have never met someone with such a chaotic fighting method, and I hope I never will again." Tezzera dove down, his blade prepped by his ear for a powerful horizontal slash. "Yes." The Arankor stuck his free hand out, red energy forming on the tips. "Oh, sh." The raging blast surged down, bathing everything in an identically colored glow. It struck in a terrifying explosion as the air shook and thrashed, kicking dust and smoke throughout the entire field. Naruto held his Rasengan out in front of him. The orb unfazed by the destruction. The beam hadn't struck him. Had Tezzera aimed for the house instead? Did he dare look back when the Arankor could lunge out of the fog at any moment? Something was definitely casting a shadow from within the shroud. Was that a wall? Revealed by a gentle clearing breeze, a proud wall of sand stretched out wider than the house and completely undamaged from the deadly blast. That was an impressive zero. Naruto's mouth opened in excitement and Gaara landed on top of the wall. His posture remained as rigid as ever, a sharp contrast to the white coat billowing out behind him. "Are you an Espada?" Tezzera's uncovered eye narrowed as he stood in the air. "I am the sole Frachian of Noitra-sama, the 5th Espada." "I see." The sand floated away from the wall and formed into long tendrils. "Then you are merely a nuisance to be dealt with quickly." Chapter 5. A nuisance. Tezzera let his sword drop down to the side as his lone eye scanned Gaara's coat. You wear a captain's Haori, yet we have no information about you. Tell me Shinigami, did they hide you or are you merely playing at being a captain? A stream of sand shot up out of the ground, wrapping around the Aranker's neck and smashing him headfirst into the ground. The sand wall lowered Gaara as it pooled out across the field. Did that feel like someone who is merely playing? Gaara glanced over his shoulder. It is good to see you unharmed, Naruto Uzumaki. Naruto's mouth trembled as it formed into a smile. His fellow Jinchuriki looked older than he remembered, more like an adult, but still stood an inch or so shorter. His red hair was a little shaggier and the teal eyes a little bright. Watch out. His barrier swept up behind him, blocking Tezra's slash. The Aranker sprang back as the sand reached out to ensnare him. Gaara slowly turned away from Naruto and watched as Tezra landed roughly with his blade in front of him. More sediment spiraled up around the Frachian's body and with a wave of the captain's arm, compressed into a solid stalagmite. I still find it odd how poorly many on the side handle indirect attacks. Man, dying hasn't made you lose your edge. Naruto walked up beside him. You're even using less sand. Jiraiya-san taught me the importance of efficiency and precision. I never had time to fully train their applications on that side. He offered his hand. It is good to see you again, my friend. Same here. Naruto. Nell came running across the field waving her hands in the air. I was so scared Tezra was going to gut you. Where'd all this sand come from? Who's that guy? Gaara gave Naruto a questioning look. Long story. Nell neared them, casting a wary eye on Gaara's Haori. Suddenly, a powerful Reiatsu exploded behind her blowing the sand pillar apart. Tezra charged out of the debris, his powerful hooves puncturing the ground in quaking steps. He raised a powerful arm high up over his gleaming tusks and swung down. Dynamic entry. Lee sailed through the air and slammed his foot into the side of the warthog's face. Its head rocked back as Lee sprung off and scooped up the little girl. Tezra's shadow loomed over him and he only had time to see a massive hand back fist him into the fire at the front of the shack. Sliding face first through ember and flames then twisting, he shielded Nell with his body and crashed through the shack's wall. Lee. Naruto sprinted over to the hole and peered inside. Lee, are you okay? The Taijutsu user lay flat on his back with his head toward the opening and an arm wrapped protectively over Nell. Even flattened out, he gave a prone variation of his nice guy pose. His face was slightly thinner than in the past with sharper more defined features. His eyes had narrowed, so while large, they weren't the same freakishly round orbs from before. The fire had singed his eyebrows to a human level and teased his hair into something slightly more wild than the immaculate bowl cut. He still looked like Lee, just more masculine. Perrin rushed over, checking Nell over as she helped her to her feet. Are you hurt anywhere? I'm just a little dizzy. Nell teetered back and forth. I think I'm gonna barf. Do it on Ichigo then. Okay. Ichigo shouted a protest, but Nell stumbled over and crashed into him. His weak abs gave out and he fell back to the floor. Karen pulled Lee up and froze, a light blush forming over her cheeks. Lee took her hand in his. I apologize for the destruction of your home. I will not leave until I have knocked down as many trees as you need to rebuild it better than before. The blush deepened. Naruto shook his head with a sigh. He whipped around as the ground shook and saw Tezra pulling his fist out of the earth as Gaara landed behind him. Naruto frowned as the Aranker swatted away the sand, relentlessly grabbing at him and smashed another barrier. He charged through a veil of sand and crushed Gaara's head before the body faded away. This is my first time battling an Aranker. Gaara appeared next to Naruto in a whirl of his element. I was hoping to gain some experience before I encountered a powerful one. Tezra broke free from another dozen tendrils. Why didn't you try to help Lee? I told him I would let him die if he could not handle himself. Gaara glanced out of the corner of his eye. He and the child are fine, yes. The way Karen was looking at him, I'm not sure. Naruto stretched out his hand in preparation of a Rasengan. Alright, let's take this guy down. There is no need for you to participate. But if you were capable of defeating him, you would have done so already. Gaara strode forward, ignoring the blonde scowl. You need time to adapt to your soul. Your sand can't crush him though. Yes, but again, Naruto. Gaara brought his arm out to the side. I merely took the time to gain some experience since the opportunity was available. He swiped his arm forward and 20 large blades of sand burst out of the pool resting on the ground. Surrounding Tezra like a cage, they rushed inward. The Aranker batted away the first wave only for a new layer to replace it. In little more than an instant, the first razor edge struck, then the next, the rest followed in a rapid series until all motion stopped. Suna Kiritori Gakusha. Bits of Tezra slowly began to fall until the diced entirety of his body crumbled under gravity's weight. The sand surged up and consumed the remains, grinding it into oblivion. Gaara pulled the blade out an inch from the gourd tied to the small of his back and the core sediment steadily returned. When the last grain entered the odd scabbard, he fully sheathed his Zanpakuto and faced Naruto. Remind me not to piss you off ever. For him to give you so much difficulty, you must have materialized a very short time ago. I am sure you will be stronger than me soon enough. The Millennium Earl never stopped moving. If he stood, he would hop around or rock back and forth. If he sat, his arms would swing around in a grand performance as he spoke. Every physical action alluded to an underlying agitation, so deep under the skin the being could only suffer without relief. Yet, his charming words carried the wisdom of something cold and ancient. And whatever aura lurked under the cheerful facade was so densely malevolent it made the Espada, beings born of death, uncomfortable. The more the creature appeared, the more curious Aizen became. What kind of power was it? How deep did it go? How did it compare to the spiritual energy of a Rancor and Shinigami alike? The creature itself became a greater curiosity as well. What was the breadth of its existence? How did no one know of it? More importantly, how did this grey man know so much? Oh, I see the gears turning in that grand mind of yours. The Earl sipped at his tea. You have many questions about this other world, I am sure. I am more curious about how you know of a world no one else does and how you plan to reach it. The Earl took another sip and a low rumble seeped through his teeth. When the man I spoke of arrived, he had already passed on and became a being like yourself, a soul. The only reason he did not immediately cross into the afterlife was because of his vast spiritual power, which allowed him to become the first physical spirit, the first Shinigami. And he attempted to thwart your flood. Yes. My flood was both symbolic as well as literal. It should have removed any trace of humanity, leaving only my family of Noah. The slightest twitch revealed the tightening of the Earl's hand. I defeated him, but not before he ensured humanity's survival. His interference allowed future generations to be born without the Noah gene being their dominant trait. No new Noah would ever exist. Our blood only remained strong enough for my family to be reborn in another life. Instead of my children having Noah children, they only birthed sinful humans. These Noah. Are they like you? No, they lack this charming shape of mine. The Earl waved his free hand dismissively. No, were chosen humans gifted with my power. So humans merely gave birth to humans without your power. Do not be so dismissive of their pain. The Earl paused and coughed lightly into his fist. My dear little pup, a Noah giving birth to a human is no different than a human giving birth to a snake. The few who did not outright consider their newborns as abominations suffered the most. They tried to show love, but humans instinctively fear Noah. The Earl gazed up through the ceiling, the ornate slats allowing the moon to cast a melancholic glow. His yellow eyes glazed over as if the past played out before them. The hurt they felt being rejected by squalling infants, unable to even see the kindness in their faces. Aizen silently clasped his hands, peering over his fingers as his elbows rested on the table. So the creature did possess emotions buried deep under the carefree speeches. How interesting that something radiating such darkness held compassion for others, no less. They let their children go then. They cared for their children from afar. The Earl set his cup down and held his cheeks as a fake blush crept up. Oh, there I go telling stories again. I'm afraid age has worsened my rambling. The Earl giggled and shook himself back and forth in embarrassment. Then let us get back on topic. Yes, the man from another world, the great sage of that world. I am still unsure whether he created the path or stumbled upon it. Regardless, he put a gate in place to prevent anyone from this side going over there. Then how do we get over there? You must understand our battle lasted decades. He founded and trained the first Shinigami within Soul Society. They battled my Noah, and neither side paid attention to these soul-eating creatures called hollows that were starting to appear. He only sealed the path after the final confrontation that led to both our demise. The hollow slipped through to that side. A sentient, very intelligent hollow that posed as a god of death for humans to summon at the cost of their souls. The Earl walked his fingers across the table to a plate of meat. But it did not slip through. The sage sent it through to somehow act as a cork to block the path. Your blonde guest killed this hollow 7 years ago. Which unlocked the gate. And it has slowly been opening ever since then. Aizen leaned back in his chair as the Earl dug into the plate. This being was so random there was no way he could discern truth from fiction. Everything it said could be derived solely from mad delusions. However, so much of Soul Society's history remained entrenched in oral stories of a lawless era. Not until Genryusai Dono established the Gate 13 and Sarate did formal records take root. The truth of this information did not matter. Merely that the creature knew enough to choose it as a setting carried importance. For you to know about the one who rescued Ichigo, you must have spent time in that world. I have my ways. The path needs to be widened for any real force to invade. Only a few weaker hollows are stumbling through right now. Dabbing his toothy mouth with a handkerchief, the Earl pushed the empty plate away. We have more pressing matters to attend to at the moment. Come. Let us go speak with this child who can reject fate. Ichigo leaned against the doorframe of the shack to keep himself upright. The Karen woman may have been unsympathetic in her treatment and lacked a caring bedside manner, but the results worked. He could at least make it to Sarate on his own, even if it would take hours more than usual in his current state. He refused to be carried anymore though. Naruto chatted excitedly with the Lee guy as Gaara discreetly teased Nell by using his sand to tap her shoulder, then disappear into the dirt. Everyone else probably didn't see it from where they were. They thought he was focused entirely on the two most animated guys. They were an odd group. Then again, Naruto seemed like the kind of guy who'd be a magnet for odd. He still hadn't figured him out. On one hand, Naruto stuck with him, a complete stranger, and fought a losing battle to get them all out of Hueco Mundo. Then, he turned around and left Orihime behind. Sure, Naruto's reasoning made sense and may have even been the right call. I would have found a way to save all of them though. He knew his friends would manage until he found a way to get back again. The other Shinigami may be upset since he went once against their orders, but that didn't mean he wasn't going to dive right back in as soon as his body would let him. Orihime, Rukia Chad, Uryu, and Renji, he wouldn't let them fight alone, and he definitely wasn't going to let them go up against the stronger Espada. He would find a way to beat the upper half next time. He had to. I should go with you guys to the city. Karen walked out of the shack and stood next to him. When the Lee guy looked her way she blushed and waved her hand in front of her face. To watch over Ichigo's health of course. I'm fine, Karen-san. Karen elbowed him in the gut hard enough he doubled over. Oh Ichigo, you're still so fragile. Just look at yourself. She caught him and lowered her head down by his ear. Listen you little punk, I am not going to let that black-haired god walk out of my life without being able to chat him up first. Now, you play along and be a good patient, understood? Ichigo nodded nervously and she helped him up with a smile. Nell. Naruto crouched down to her eye level. You should probably stay here with Jugo. It should be safer than trying to explain to every Shinigami we see that you are our friend. Nope, I'm coming. Nell folded her arms and twisted her nose up in the air. It's more fun with you guys. You. If I beat you in a fight, I get to go deal. Nell, wah. Nell swung her foot up and caught him square in the groin. The blonde paled and fell over to his side in the fetal position. Nell pumped her arms up in the air and spun around. I am the champion. I am gonna kill, Naruto mumbled out before a dry heave filled his throat. Naruto-kun, do not die. Lee clenched his fist. Stand my friend. The man who killed Madara, felled by a child. Gaara shook his head. It is a sad day. Ichigo felt himself smile as Nell marched around her fallen opponent cheering. They were kind of a scary group. So friendly, even goofy, but so powerful. He'd felt how quickly Gaara defeated Tezra when he finally chose to do so. And the captain had made it clear Naruto was stronger still. If only the lost ninja had that ability in the desert. No, this was his fight. He allowed Chad and the others to join him in his rescue, even though it was against his better judgment. They weren't strong enough. He knew they wanted to be, and he couldn't be more grateful for their loyalty and friendship. However, their suffering was on him. Them being trapped in enemy territory was on him. He needed to get back to Hueco Mundo. He needed to make it right, and he would do it on his own. He refused to be carried anymore. Hinata felt her hands tremble as she caught sight of Mayuri's gleeful smile. Despite spending almost all of her time in bed without a mirror, she knew what he was so excited about. She could feel it the more her power awoke inside her body. The sensation of the tissue under her skin crawling. The predatory grace in every movement Danzo's experiments carried over. You hid something from me, girl. Mayuri waggled a finger. How absent-minded of you. I had hoped it did not carry over. Preposterous. The mad scientist tossed a file over on a desk. While the genetic work had been remedial in comparison to my own knowledge and ultimately unstable, it was so very intriguing to scrutinize. Hinata felt worry pool in her gut. Unstable. Danzo hadn't even administered something proven. Guritsuchi-san, what do you mean unstable? Their body was under a continual metamorphosis. He grasped at his chin. It is odd for it to carry over to your soul, but I have documented cases of scars, missing limbs, and other characteristics being carried over from the human body. I hypothesized it may have to do with how ingrained it was into your psyche. How much you felt it was a part of you. Hinata squeezed her fingers into a fist. She never felt like that. Even with Naruto's unflinching acceptance and the advantage it gave her in a fight, she still wanted it to go away. Am I still changing? Unfortunately, I was told to put a stop to it. Such a waste of good data. The man who developed this eventually wasn't even human. He was a snake living in a human shape. I still feel like something is crawling under my skin. Her chest tightened. Is my. She couldn't say it. The idea she would wake up one night in a slithering pile it made her nauseous. You have extremely flexible tissue and superior regenerative qualities, up to and including rebuilding new limbs. Watching your arm grow back was a treat. He ignored her incredulous gasp. The feeling you have is likely your Ryoku preparing to heal you, since you are obviously agitated and engaged in a fight or flight response. It should pass if you calm down. Calm down? Yes, she needed to. Worrying wasn't going to help right now. Hinata exhaled slowly and forced her heartbeat to slow. She was okay. She wasn't going to become like Orochimaru. Keep repeating it and breathing evenly. My eyes, are they fixed? I have limited your sphere to a manageable diameter. There is one issue you should be aware of, however. The crawling feeling surged back to life. What is it? She struggled to keep the desperation hidden from her voice. Your energy is potent. I could even say it carries a dark streak. You will gain power rapidly as a result. This does put the limitation at risk of being broken. He leaned his face in closer so that his sterile scented breath brushed her nose. I don't need to tell you how dangerous that would be in the middle of a war. Chaotic chakra-saturated wind snapped wickedly at his face as huge chunks of stone were ripped from the tower's floor. Like two demonic roars shaking against each other, the energies shrieked and made the night air tremble under the frightening clash. The void grew slowly at first, sucking in the hand first. Minato Namikaze tried to call out over the din. If his son heard him, he never knew. The orb of nothing surged outward, enveloping Naruto and Madara alike. He stared in horror for only an instant, then pulled himself to safety with his prized technique as a force from above sent Madara's spire crumbling down. Minato awoke with a sharp gasp and shot out of his chair. Aqua's eyes rapidly scanned the small living room and kitchen, his muscles trembling under his vest like a feline ready to strike. No, calm down, you're home, it was only bad memories. Rubbing the grogginess from his face, he stretched his arms over his head and yawned. Was it noon yet? He'd gotten back from his mission just before dawn and didn't want to wake Kushina by climbing into bed. You'd think I would have woken up and been able to see the twins off to the academy. They were getting too stealthy for their own good if he slept through them leaving. From what his old neighbors said, Naruto never had that problem. He frowned and moved over the kitchen table and picked up the small note resting on it. Welcome home. A small smile crept up as his thumb traced the 3 signatures decorating the bottom. It had been a long week trying to track down that band of missing nin. Being out in the field more than a few days was a rare occurrence and always made Kushina and the twins anxious. All ninja families felt it and accepted that feeling. He just didn't get as many lengthy missions anymore. It spiked the normal uneasy feelings. His attention flicked over to the bookshelf by the entrance, focusing on the orange photo album tucked into the top shelf. Why hadn't he made the same commitments earlier? Why did he continue making the same mistakes when it came to Naruto? He understood Naruto was the only one with the power to deal with Madara. He knew Naruto would only accept those he trusted as part of a team, and that list didn't include his parents. He respected that decision, but damn it if he'd only changed his mind sooner. Minato tugged his shoes on and went outside. Leaping off the railing, he sailed out over the lower houses further down the hill as the air rushed through his hair. Why? Kushina had begged him in secret before they left. She begged for him to convince Naruto to let them come. They were powerful ninja and could be the younger generation's shield. She desperately wanted to partner with Hinata to ensure the girl would make it through and Naruto wouldn't lose her. Kushina was determined to make sure they both made it home even if she had to sacrifice herself. He told her no. They never left Naruto with any choices and they had no right to interfere with his decision on who came with him. Besides, they were beneath Madara's notice strength-wise. Kakashi only made sense because of his experience training Naruto. He could anticipate where he needed to be to give Naruto the advantage. They couldn't and the same went for the other two. Having an untested team was almost worse than being outnumbered. The odds of friendly fire multiplied drastically even if everyone involved was highly skilled. She relented only because he conceded to secretly place a seal on each of them when he warped everyone as a group. The plan was to stay out of the way and then warp in if they defeated their opponents and needed to get out fast. It should have worked well. They were strong. They would win. Hinata's seal just dissipated like it had been burned off. Lee's heart stopped as he lifted up his broken body. And Naruto, all he could do is watch Naruto be eaten by his own technique. Landing on a small balcony, Minato pushed aside some thin drapes and stepped into another small living room. A worn flak jacket was framed on the far wall and provided the only thing noteworthy in the bland apartment. I didn't know you got back already, sensei. Kakashi Haddock entered from an adjoining room, his bare hands pushing the wheels of his chair. He still kept the Konoha headband over the empty socket that used to house his Sharingan and his face still hid behind the ever-present mask. His arms were still sinewy with toned muscle, but the legs had thinned considerably. It was late last night. I hope I didn't wake you. Ma, I was just doing some light reading. The copy nin gave a slight smile. Although, I still haven't really found anything that matches Jiraiya-san's works. And how are the treatments with Ino-san going? Have you made any further progress? Kakashi wheeled to the center of the room and motioned for his teacher to sit in the chair across from him. Minato accepted with a grateful nod. She fears we've gone as far as her current medical expertise allows us to, and it is leagues beyond many of the other villages' medic nin. Frankly, it was a miracle to even get my arms and chest working again. Kakashi's eye turned up in its signature style. I can still use chakra and assist our Rakudame in training your children and their teammates. I am content with that. Minato nodded slowly. When he had gotten his student back to the refugee camp, they found his spine crushed and multiple sections completely severed. It had taken years of study and painful experimentation for Ino Yamanaka to gain the ability to even take it this far. I don't know how you do it, Kakashi. You taught me to keep moving forward. Minato let his eyes drift to the floor. Kakashi had looked so completely broken he thought his genius student was dead. It had only been the sudden movement of his shoulders and an instinctive lunge that allowed him get them both out before Naruto's technique devoured them both. His student had survived, outliving another team and more friends. I never thought you wouldn't blame me. I mean, I blame myself for many things. I think guilt always comes to the front when someone we cherish dies. I wake up remembering that night often, and it gets me second-guessing every decision I ever made in regards to him. You put the village first. Did I though? Minato rested his forehead on his hands. Sandaime literally begged to take my place in sealing the Kyuubi. I was so sure only I knew enough about the seal to make changes if something went wrong or if Madara attacked directly. I stubbornly believed I couldn't ask someone else to sacrifice their life. Minato closed his eyes and tilted his head to the side with a grimace. I would have kept Danzo in line. I would have convinced the fire daimyo to let Kushina stay. Naruto would never have grown up alone and Kushina wouldn't hate herself. Naruto would have had all the training he ever needed to stop Madara early. Minato's jaw tightened until it almost cramped. He would have had my Hiraishin, Kakashi. And I could have been there for him from the start. Kakashi focused his lone eye directly on his teacher's face. Saying that being alone to struggle made him the exceptional ninja, the exceptional man he became would only be a way to ease our own conscience. The only thing we know is that he became the best despite us. That is the only comfort we get. That is the only comfort we deserve. Orihime Inoue stood beside Aizen's throne in his expansive assembly hall. The same room she was first brought to when they captured her. She still wasn't sure how she felt being around him. His power could saturate the air with a smirk. It often smothered her to the point she worried she would pass out. However, he wouldn't hurt her, and none of his rancor, gathered at the base of the steps, would either. The few that did were quickly dealt with. She wasn't sure what Noitra would do if he ever managed to isolate her. Part of her believed he wouldn't risk Aizen's wrath and harm her. The other part of her was just glad Ulquiorra showed up in time she never found out. It was draining being around people you weren't sure would harm you or if the person holding your leash would let you go and give his wolves free rein. Her heart hurt though. It hurt enough to cover up the fear of her murky future. Renji-sen was dead so the others could escape. All of them were terribly hurt because they wanted to save her. Kurosaki-kun was hurt trying to save her and she had no idea if he was still alive or not. Naruto-san seemed smart and strong. She prayed he got them all to safety. Such a cute young lady to wield such a frightful power. Orihime felt a deep cold seep into her bones as a Rot-un demon floated down from the shadowed ceiling using an umbrella. Her mouth ran dry as every cell in her body recoiled from the invisible malignant presence he cast around him. Aizen let out some of his own power in an almost gentle way, like it was wrapping around her as a shield. It unnerved her she found the gesture slightly comforting. Who the frick are you? Noitra rubbed at his recently healed jaw and swung his crescent scythe out in front of him. The fifth Espada had been extremely violent since their return, threatening his comrades and leaving to kill weaker rancor and hollows. It didn't help Jin often snuck jabs at his pride, mocking him for being unable to finish off Kurosaki-kun and the others. Good evening. The Earl gave a bow to the Espada. I see you have recovered from your thrashing. Why you fat little F. Noitra. Aizen's rested the side of his head on his fist. Please do not be rude to our guest. The Millennium Earl is always welcome in my home. Oh, let the boy have his fun, my future ascendant. The Earl's manic eyes glowed through his glasses. I promise not to be too rough on the child. Very well. Perhaps, it is time you prove you possess some level of spiritual power. What I use is far different from that. He kicked his leg up behind him and balanced on his toes. Shall we begin? Noitra scowled and swung this massive weapon down. The Earl spun away effortlessly then bounced to his other foot. The Espada lunged forward with a stab and the Rot-un man flicked the flat of the blade with tips of his gloved fingers, sending Noitra spiraling across the floor. Orihime watched as fear pummeled her insides. The Earl never used any form of high-speed movement or let off any power, but he was dominating the hollow man who crushed Kurosaki-kun and Naruto-san. The gray man chuckled and teased like it was a friendly game of tag, even though nothing but pure murder radiated off of Neutra's every expression and action. Her gray eyes turned to Aizen. On the surface, he appeared normal. For some reason though, she could almost see how unusually interested he was. Nothing ever escaped his notice, but nothing ever truly captured his attention either. This strangely shaped person, this Earl, had Aizen's full interest. That scared her almost as much as the dark person himself. You have shown us you can dance well, Earl, my friend. Aizen stood and the full weight of his Reiatsu came crashing down upon everyone in the room. Neutra and Orihime fully fell to their knees, and even the stronger Espada and Aizen's personal guards had sweat forming on their brows. But you have not shown me the power necessary to back your promises. Orihime struggled to look up and keep conscious, even as it felt like the air itself was squeezing the life out of her. She caught sight of the Earl as her vision tunneled, and for a moment, his eyes caught her watering ones, and pure terror made time stop for her. Those eyes were laughing. The Earl simply stood there unfazed, completely amused at Aizen's display. The inhuman creature chuckled and gave a sweeping bow. Is that all you wish to see? I do apologize then for wasting your time. You will forgive me for amusing myself of course. Aizen reined his Reiatsu back in as the Earl gave a wink. Spinning on his heel, the Shinigami knelt down in front of her and offered his hand like a charming prince. I apologize, my dear Orihime. He took her shaking hand in his own and helped her up. I am afraid I cannot select who feels my power. The Espada collectively balked as he moved her over to his throne and guided her into the seat. Turning back to the audience, he stood regally at her side and peered down as Neutra struggled to reclaim his footing. Can you go on, Neutra? Yes, Aizen-sama. The Ranker's Reiatsu swept out over the floor. I'm going to cleave you in half. The Earl stepped in as an orb of dark purple, encased within a pink glow, crackled to life within his palm and gently pressed it into the Espada's chest. In a blinding flash, the room quaked as the glow of a powerful blast slowly died down. The Earl faced the throne. Neutra lay sprawled atop the remains of a pillar, a smoking barely living husk. The power I wield is called dark matter. It is yours to use as you deem fit, so long as it furthers our goals. Aizen's eyes narrowed even as the honey-brown orbs shimmered in excitement. And what are your goals, Millennium Earl? I wish to see you loom over this world as God. The Earl thrust his pointer finger into the air. I wish for you to wipe the sinful blight that is humanity from existence. I wish to see you craft a new world and a new heaven. I want what was promised to me as the first disciple. I want the Noah to inherit your earth and be blessed as your children. Naruto groaned silently as Nell requested another break. He knew she didn't need it and only asked because Ichigo was too damn stubborn to ask for one himself. The kid hid his fatigue well at first. He'd wipe sweat away when he thought no one was looking, and his shoulders only sagged after he fell a step back. Ichigo was tough and Naruto respected him for it. However, he didn't dare take his eye off the carrot top. The substitute had a look in his eye he'd seen in the mirror plenty of times, that pure stubborn glint to do something well-meaning and stupid. Considering Orihime and the rest of the rescue team were still in that desert, it didn't take much to figure out what Ichigo intended to do. He'd keep an eye on him for the time being and then ask around Sirte. I wish I could say things were peaceful in this life and that our problems only extended to protecting souls from hollows. Gaara picked Nell up under his arm, ignoring her babbled protests. Let me guess, another jackass who wants the power to do something selfish. Naruto angrily scratched the back of his head. Just tell me it doesn't involve any Sharingan. His name is Sasuke-san. He was the 5th Division's captain until he betrayed us alongside 2 other captains. Us? I took over as captain of the 9th Division to replace the traitor Kanem Tosen. Us refers to the Gate 13. Oh. Naruto shook off the discomfort Gaara's admission triggered. So what's this guy's deal? He wants to overthrow the Spirit King, the ruler of Soul Society. Nell gave up and hung limply. He's used a device called the Hijyoku to create an army of a ranker. I'm sure you are aware of how dangerous they can be. So why don't these Gate guys just invade? Aizen is in a similar position to Danzo when he took over Odo, in both terms of strategy and inside knowledge. He likely has countermeasures in place to trap us there. Gaara glanced back at Ichigo. Doing so would leave Karakura town defenseless when Aizen launches the first strike in his war. And that place is? My hometown. Ichigo walked up beside them. He's going to sacrifice everyone to the Hijyoku to make the key needed to get to the Spirit King city. That is truly despicable. Lee slapped Ichigo's shoulder. Do not worry, my new friend. We shall defend your home with our burning fists. Eren quirked an eyebrow with an amused smile. Like how you defended my home. Lee slumped and Karen quickly reached out for his arm. Hey, I'm sorry I didn't. You're completely right, Karen-san. Lee flipped onto his hands. I must develop this body through the same intensive training I did in my past. I shall travel the remainder of our journey upon my fingers alone. Lee. Forget it, Karen. Naruto folded his hands behind his head. It's worked for him up until now. Ichigo-kun, join me in the powerful training masterfully crafted by Guy-sensei. Ichigo jabbed a thumb toward Lee. Is he serious? Lee was one of the best. Although, don't believe what he says about skin-tight green jumpsuits and legwarmers. Karen stifled a perverted giggle. That looks like fun. Nell wiggled free from Gaara and hopped over. She paused as a horrified expression stretched across her face. I have no pants. With a defeated sigh she bent over at the waist and trudged back up to Gaara. I will tell you more later. He picked Nell up again. Having you around will be a large boost to our strength. I've got a ways to go before I'm in fighting shape again. Naruto ignored the voice in the back of his head, questioning whether he actually wanted to get involved in another fight. He needed to fight and deal with that grey bastard he met in the void. It didn't matter how he felt about it. Fighting again didn't mean it would turn out like the battle with Madara. It didn't. They exited the forest trail, and gigantic white walls rose up from the ground to meet them. Gaara led them over to a gate larger than most buildings. Their strange group entered as those seeing it for the first time let their jaws drop in awe. The walls had to be 3 times taller than Konoha's, and they stretched out so wide he couldn't see the ends of them. If you are going to gawk, you should probably place your attention on something more worthy, Naruto. Gaara set Nell down, and she quickly pointed straight ahead. Hey, who's the babe? Naruto looked down and all the air caught in his lungs. Nah, Naruto-kun. He squeezed his eyes shut as they watered, and the warmest smile he ever had formed on his lips. Hey Hinata. What if Naruto and Hinata were in Bleach? End here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.